June 6th meeting to order. And our first order of business is to approve the minutes. I'm going to call on our vice chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've read those minutes and found everything to be in order, so I'll move for approval.
Motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Johnson, second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. I'm going to call on Mr. Ted Beatty for our investment report, please.
Thanks, sir. We didn't have any bids this month, and the rate actually dropped a little. It dropped 4 basis points. So, you know, the stocks have been up this week a little bit. Bonds are up, and so interest rates are inverse to bonds. So we're going to probably see rates kind of drop. There's some speculation that the Fed will actually drop rates this year. So we've probably seen, if something doesn't change, peak in rates, and they will begin to drop a little bit on us. But our short-term rates are better than anything that we can get a year or two out. So we're just staying, we're still at 2.66 is our effective rate.
Okay, you've heard the report.
Motion.
Mr. Johnson, and a second by Commissioner Piercy. All in favor of the report, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we have a general fund budget transfer for the trustee. I assume you'll do that also?
Yes, sir. Thank you for letting me do that. This is just a transfer within our budget to purchase a product called Clear that helps us find people. It gives us phone numbers and more information when we get returned mail or we get businesses that have moved and we don't have a correct address. And hopefully this will assist us in locating these folks and collecting taxes and cutting down on return mail and those things. So this will allow us to use that service for a year.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Dodge,
Second.
is there any further discussion or question, Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ted, is there any thought of sharing that data with other agencies, interagencies?
We'll have one license to use that, but it's not going to be something that we would use all day, every day. So anybody that wants to use it certainly would be welcome to. We can set that up with IT where it's on a system where somebody can use it, you know, not within our parameters.
Like for Brian, see if he was here, but, you know, I was just thinking of other agencies that are always looking, you know, to collect fines.
It's like a subscriber license.
I'm sorry?
We use it, it's by subscriber license, you have to buy a subscriber license.
So Lisa Harrell would have to purchase it.
But I think if somebody wanted to come use ours, they can come in and use ours, because we're not going to be as, I mean, there'll be times that we use it, but if somebody wants to come for an hour or two, it's not going to be where they can't do that. I mean, we'd be able to set aside and say, you've got a list, you come use this system.
Okay.
Unlike, you know, folks that use it all the time, so we'd be glad for them to do that. Several others use it. It seems to be maybe the best. Used to, we could just Google folks and find them pretty well. Now, if you get close, you know, for $17.99, we'll tell you where you are, and it just is not, it ceased to be very effective in finding their information. Sir.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion? If not, call roll, please.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodge?
Yes.
Mr. Peak?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Mr. Beatty. Next on the agenda is the fund condition report. Lisa.
Okay, we're going to start with the development tax. In May, we received $1,348,500. Brings our total for the year to $6,026,250. Of that amount that we received in May, $1,047,000 of it was in Murfreesboro, which was made up of 359 apartments, 101 extended stay units, and townhouses. I think Mark found that it was an apartment complex on Memorial Boulevard.
I might point out that's good news and it's also bad news. The good news is that's a lot over our estimate. The bad news is we're soon going to be building schools and other infrastructure for these folks that are moving in. So,
Okay. On the cash balances at the end of May, our balances was $303,743,000, with $271,876,000 being operating funds, $31,867,000 being borrowed funds. On this one, well, we don't typically go to the page I'm getting ready to send you to. That's not coming up. It's, there it is, okay. If you will go to page 7 of 29, and that's the expenditures, appropriations that we had at the end of May. Look at the middle column, our year-to-date expenditures and encumbrances, and then beside it, the funds available. So at the end of May of 2019, we have $14,900 available. And I just kind of look at that and say, well, how did we do last year? Remember, as we're going through our budget process, it's like, we've kind of looked at revenue, but a factor is also, what are we not going to spend? So just looking at, again, we're not going to spend everything. In May of 2018, as a comparison, we had $15.3 million available. And by the end of June, we did not spend 5.7. So there's still going to be a component. In June of 2018, we spent $11 million, almost $11.5. That's total we spent in June. You go to schools. 17. I guess I'm just bringing this to your attention that this is going to be a component to think about. On pages 22 of 29, schools at the end of May have $50.8 million available. Compared to May of 2018, they had 43.4 available. And in June of 2018, they had not spent 9.8, but in June of 2018, they had also spent almost 39 million. So, it's nothing that I can concisely say this is how much is going to be spent, because at this point you don't know. We really don't know till we close the books 3 weeks into July. It's some indication that, just to let you know, we're not going to spend, we don't spend it all. The budget for it,
The fund balance might increase some.
that's what I'm saying,
Fund
but
balance.
balance, will we end this year and begin next year.
So it's not unexpected revenue that we can.
Which we've kind of
It's just a
addressed that, but
different
this is
fund.
the other part of it.
Okay. Thanks.
I kind of want to go through that for the ones that have not been, wanting to just see it all the way through. Okay, so I've got revenue, the revenue review, but I'm really not going to go over it because we really went over it in detail and made adjustments for it. Those adjustments that we made will go to the commission next week. It's not reflected in these numbers.
Okay, any further questions for Lisa on the report? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Pearson, Commissioner Pearson.
Second.
Commissioner Dodd. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next is our risk management financial report.
Good evening.
Welcome, Mr. Hill.
All right, Fund 264, looking at the graphs, looking at your revenue. By the calendar year, prior year, your revenue's at 38.7, your expenditures are at 27.8 million. Compared to the current year, your revenue's at 39.6 million and your expenditures at 28.2 million. If you look at the fiscal year, your revenue's at 66.2 million. And your expenditures at 60.9 million. Current year, you're looking at 70.4 million in revenue with your expenditures at 64.5 million. And if you look at the 24-month graph, you can see it's pretty much trending the same. Next page. Middle of the page, you can see where total enrollment is. We're at 6,262. We expect that number to go up due to the fact of the Board of Education hiring for 2 new schools. So we would expect that number to increase in July and August, and possibly on into September. When you get down to the bottom, as far as the 2018-2019 fiscal year comparison, when you're looking at your totals for revenue at $70.4 million and expenses at $64.5 million, you see the revenue less expenses at 5.876, gives us a 0.08 margin. Keep in mind, this fund builds up, but then in July and August, it'll drop quickly because of the Board of Education being on 10 months and loss of, or no premiums for July and August. Moving on to Fund 266. On the work injury fund, and if you take a look at the year-over-year paid claims, you can see that every now and then you'll see a bump in workers' comp, but for the most part, you can see this year compared to last year, we're running a little bit less, and we'll go to that on the next page, and then you see your workers' comp versus OJI costs. And again, I point out, I think open workers' comp claims, we only have about 7 compared to quite a few of your OJI claims. That, Dan gives that report to the safety committee. On the next page, most important thing to me I look at is when you look at the box and you see year-to-date for the current year, you'll see $734,204 year-to-date in claims compared to last year, which was $878,446 year-to-date. And as you can tell, we're about 16% less than what we were last year on those expenditures. And then the next thing we have would be your liability of legal expenses. And you can just see, again, one year compared to the next as far as Hudson, Reed, and McQuarrie. You can see May compared to May of last year. And you can see that it's trending. The attorney's fees are less than what they were last year, but you can't go by that from year to year.
That's,
Any questions?
I just wanted to point out, I've had a lot of people ask me at times exactly what do we end up paying our county attorney. Of course, we have some fixed costs that are in the budget. I think it's be $265,000 for next year for the county attorney's office and the county attorney and secretaries, things like that. These costs are from a third-party administrator that we receive these bills from. Lisa, you can...
It's going through our third-party administrator through a separate fund. This fund, we're receiving money from the general fund, highway, and schools, and it goes in here, and that's where it's paid out. But it goes through a third party that is reviewing those claims.
And then there's also a small amount in the mayor's budget for claims, dog bites, similar things along those lines.
Where they go to court.
Right, where they end up going to court. But people that are wanting to know what we're paying our attorneys, they can look at this and get a good idea. So, but I promise the people I'd point that out next time we got here. So is there any other questions for Mr. Eagle?
I have one on the second page, the net other post-employment benefits. It says TBD, last year was $188 million. Is there any money in our budget going toward paying these, or are they just liabilities that
It's
are
liabilities.
staring us in the face that we
Staring in the face.
have to figure out later?
Okay. That's a number that, unlike pension, the commission could at any time say, we're not going to pay for retiree benefits, health benefits. And if this commission ever did that, that number goes away. Now, then the accounting standards that it doesn't matter whether or not
Yeah.
they're going to
So
do
the
it,
commission goes over
More
to.
pitchforks.
then it's, and having lived through making changes to retiree health benefits, it's not easy. And the likelihood, I don't want to speak for y'all, but it's difficult to make changes to that. And I believe, with the accounting standards, that's your rules now. This is what your guidelines are. You've got to account for it. And all it is saying, for everybody who has worked for Rutherford County, who's met these requirements, it's estimated cost that the county will have to pay out in the future, that we are recognizing that benefit over the life of that employee's work history. Expenses in the future, recognized now.
So who's paying
We are paying as we go. So we are not funding any of these future costs. We are only funding for those retirees who are retired today. And we are paying, depending on where they are, about half of their premium cost. So we are on a pay-as-you-go. The one way to reduce that number is to set up a trust, an irrevocable trust, to put money aside for that, just like pension. But not a lot of governments have done that. The number is huge. You can see where it jumped.
Yeah, double.
It doubled because the accounting standards changed on how we recognize that. When we started requiring us to report those costs, it was like, okay, at the time that we had to do the, figure out where are we, the standards were, okay, you only have to recognize 1/30 of that. We'll just start, zero, even though that liability is really big and it's out there, you only have to recognize 1/30 of it and amortizing it over 30 years. And we were doing that. Then the standards changed and said, no, you got to recognize it all. And so that's where you see the double.
Are there any further questions on the report? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Johnson, Piercy. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we have a property casualty liability and accident renewal. Mr. Elam, I guess is going to present that too.
Yes,
correct?
David Patterson is here with Assured Partners. We got into this a little bit, I think, the last budget meeting. But now that we said we were coming back, and so we're here.
Is that my cue?
That's your cue.
Okay. So in your information, and there's a lot of information here, and I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail, just in the interest of brevity, but I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have about any of this stuff if you see a line item or something. So I'm just going to hit the highlights, the really important stuff, and changes that we have proposed for the upcoming policy year. One of the big changes is on the property insurance. Historically, we've been with Travelers, and the recommendation from the insurance committee is to change that to the Public Entity Property Insurance Program, which is a Lexington insurance company. For a couple of significant reasons. The coverages are tremendously better, and the premium is a lot less. So that's a good combination when it comes to insurance premiums. Less is more. One of the significant changes that we're going to make in coverage is historically we have had $100 million per occurrence limit on the property, meaning any one fire, tornado, any one event, the most that the Travelers would have paid is $100 million. Well, Now we have schools that are clustered, and $100 million, if we lost 2 schools, 3 schools in one event, one tornado.
Blackman, for example.
Blackman's a great example. I mean, if a tornado landed on that campus, $100 million may not be enough. So we're increasing that to $500 million per occurrence. We're adding boiler and machinery coverage, which is kind of a mechanical breakdown for the boilers and the air conditioning systems and all that stuff. That was currently not covered under the travelers. We're increasing the property and transit limit from $100,000 to $25 million. Increasing the pollution coverage from $100,000 to $2 million, which also includes above-ground storage tanks, fuel tanks, is included in that $2 million limit. It was excluded before. Errors and emissions coverage, this is a good oops coverage for all of us in case we forgot to put something on the schedule or forgot to add a building or something like that. We have $50 million if we just forgot to put something on the schedule, so that's nice. Extra expense coverage was $2.5 million, now it's $500 million. A very big coverage that was not covered was flood in Zone A, meaning a flood zone. You have a special hazard zone, A and E, and I think we have $21 million, I'm doing that from memory, $21 million in special zone A. It was previously excluded from coverage, so if there had been a flood, there had been no coverage for that. Now we have $10 million. We're including builder's risk coverage, $25 million. Another significant change that we're making is we're adding auto physical damage to the property on a replacement cost basis, meaning if we lose, fire chief loses a brand new shiny fire truck, those things run about $1 million these days. We're going to give him a brand new fire truck. It's not going to be adjusted on an actual cash value basis, a depreciated basis. It'll be adjusted for new. So if a new one costs $1.1 million, then we're going to give him a $1.1 million fire truck. That's the significant parts of the property. Any questions, or did you see any line items on there that you have a question about? Yes, sir.
David, on the builder's risk, is that existing addresses of locations currently on the policy, or is that pick up any new?
Correct. Course of construction and new.
And new.
So if we're
going to a new location to build
a brand new building,
it's covered. It's not currently listed on the policy,
Right.
Then we have up to $25 million.
correct.
That's good.
And if we're doing the renovations, that's covered as well.
That's good.
And the 2 new schools, Rockvale and I think Rock Springs Elementary, they're both, Rocky Fork, I'm sorry, Rocky Fork Elementary, they are on here already.
Yeah, I've got those values already. They're not finished yet, but I
Yes.
think they'll be online in
But they
August.
have been added to this
But
already.
those values are contemplated in this. Yeah, I actually got that done for no additional premium.
That's good.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Good for us.
Any other questions? On the next page, we're getting to the casualty coverages, and the recommendation from the insurance committee was to stay with Brit, which is the current carrier that we're with. And everything is pretty much coverage-wise staying the same with that. Again, the only major difference is the addition of the auto physical damage at replacement cost, brand new fire truck, as opposed to an actual cash value. So if you have a 15-year-old fire truck that's worth $75,000 now, but to replace it is $1 million, we're going to get $1 million to fix that, or to replace that fire truck. Any questions about the casualty? Okay, then if you'll jump over to the cyber liability, which is probably a couple, 2 or 3 pages in. This is a brand new coverage that we didn't currently have. It was a recommendation of the insurance committee to add cyber liability. That is network security, information security. Everybody's getting hacked these days. We weren't insured for that, and now we will be insured for that with a $2 million limit.
And we've sat down with Brian in OIT and discussed this with him before we decided to do this.
Yeah, he thought it was a good idea.
And a limit on ransom. Under the cyber,
Yeah, so that's built, that's a $2 million, it's all, everything's $2 million for cyber extortion.
Interesting point yesterday. I was in a class with Moody's, and this is one of the areas that they're going to be asking additional questions on
Well,
in our
it's
ratings.
getting out of control. The ransom is just 60 Minutes had an article or a show just last month, where they went in and hit the little town down in Alabama and held them for ransom for $50,000. Then they went to Indiana and got a hospital for $200,000, and said they took their whole systems down and would not give them the passcodes to get back in to bring their stuff up. So the hospital couldn't even admit new people through emergency room. And the mayor down in Alabama, where Charles Barkley is from, he said, we're just a little bitty town. He sent that back and he said, I can give you $10,000. And they said, okay, we'll take it. But it has to be paid in Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Because it's the only thing that's not traceable. So it's no telling where it's going, but all these institutions are being held ransom, so I just want to make sure we got at least $2 million.
Yes.
Okay, I'm seeing on the very last page, you got a summary of all these, and I'm seeing $4 million on the cyber liability insurance. Has that just not been updated, or?
Oh, but those were options.
Oh, okay.
So there's options to increase it. I always like to give lots of options. So
Can you increase the ransom?
they're all built, so we'd have to go to 3, 4 for everything.
Is that 2 million Bitcoins? Or?
It would be $2 million, whatever the equivalent Bitcoin would be. But I mean, you don't even have to be a rocket scientist to do the ransom thing. I mean, you just buy the software, send it to some unsuspecting employee, they click the link, and it's game on. I mean, it's literally that simple. So
Scary.
yeah.
Anybody ideas? Let's move on. Let's move on.
Ready to retire.
The next slide, there's no questions about cyber. The next slide is the dental professional liability, and that's a standalone for the dentist and the dental hygienist. It's the exact same coverage as last year, $1 million per claim with a $3 million aggregate. It's a pretty inexpensive coverage. It's a professional liability coverage for the dentist for that for the health clinic.
So this recommendation was Admiral?
Correct.
Can I go back to cyber liability?
Yes.
You mentioned APIC on that one?
Correct.
Also, okay.
Correct.
Sorry.
And then the last piece of the puzzle is, this policy doesn't renew until September, but we have a occupational accident coverage policy for the volunteer firefighters. And you can see there's a whole schedule of benefits, and I'm not going to bore you guys with all these details. If you see anything that jumps out at you, let me know. But it covers the volunteer firefighters getting hurt on the job, $50,000. It's a nice little benefit for those guys.
Premium at 5,000 down at the bottom.
Yeah, that's kind of my best guess because it doesn't really renew until September. It'll probably be a little less than that, probably $4,500, $4,700. But I didn't want to. I'd rather say 5. And it'd be 47, then say 47, and it's 49. So.
I'll make a motion to accept the insurance committee's recommendation.
Second.
Commissioner Stevens, second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd? Yes. Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Okay, now, I'm going to keep Mr. Elam here a moment longer. We've got a general fund budget transfer for risk management.
Yes. The first thing you have to increase expenditure on data processing services is we have DocuPhase that the Board of Education actually has it and uses the system. And what we're wanting to do is get a license where we can look into part of their records. And we have talked to them about it, they've agreed to it and all that. And what it allows us to do is, I think we're expecting maybe 450, 500 people to be hired probably in the next 60 days. And what it allows us, instead of waiting for a report for them to send to us, and by us being able to go into it, having this license, we can go into it and look at it. We can go ahead and start processing stuff. And it's more secure than the way it's being done now. So they've agreed to let us purchase this license and be able to use it in their system. And it will cut down on some errors too, as far as it won't stop all manual inputting, but we get to see the document itself instead of somebody creating another document to send to us, since we don't have DocuPhase. And then the maintenance agreement, it's just a little cleanup, I think, in that item.
It's just cleaning up those two where the expense actually happened.
Yep. And then taking it out of travel. You want to do one of them at a time or both?
Do them together.
Do them together?
Maybe doesn't.
Okay. And then on the second one, you have increased expenditures, liability insurance, 4630, and decrease in expenditures, building and contents insurance at 4630. That's another little cleanup item. Not a little, $4,600, not a little, but it's,
This is all, both of these within your budget.
yes, sir.
Is the DocuPhase something that our own HR would benefit from? Would that help you? If you had it all-
They are looking into it themselves, is what they're looking at. But what we're trying to do is, like, when you have 500 people being hired, well, what you also have is you have terminations and you have retirements this time of year, and then you have new people being hired. So we could have up to 600-700 people that we're sitting there trying to get done. And of course, they're slammed themselves, and we're kind of at their mercy to send us the stuff. Well, they'll send it to us, and I'm not complaining. I'm just saying this will get us a little more real time where our people can go in and work at it and not be at their mercy to send it to us.
No, it sounds fantastic, which is why I'm wondering, do
I
we
hope
need it
so.
for HR?
Well, and HR's looking at it as also, I don't want to speak for Sonia, but, you know, they're also looking at, they've also looked at it too.
I'm just thinking
for
about it
other things.
for your office, from your standpoint, making it as seamless as possible for you, so you only
Yes.
have to have one procedure internally
Yes.
on how you handle everything.
Yeah.
Seems
You're
that would
right,
make the
because
most
there's a
sense.
lot of manual stuff, and when there's manual stuff, there's mistakes, and we're just trying to reduce those things.
Okay, you've heard the proposal.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Allen, second Mr. Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you,
Anything else?
Mr. Hill.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
Okay, next on the agenda is an item to increase the centralized cafeteria fund cash on hand. I assume Mr. Sandick or Doug or Mr. Spurlock one will have this one.
Say we better handle it before you get to here.
So, each time we open a new school, since we centralized, we have to get y'all to approve an additional cash bank or any changes in the cash banks that we have for our school cafeteria funds. The $100 for the elementary school, basically we'll probably only hit that level. We may start that high, but depending on just how many kids show up with 20s or whatever. A lot of parents do pay online. At the high school, we start with a $1,000 bank. The times we tend to have to go up to the levels this high as we get ready for our holiday meal around Thanksgiving. We have a lot of visitors, and we want more cash. But we set this level, and then we increase, decrease, turn it back in, do all of that. And
It's for 2 new schools.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, let's call roll.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Peak?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're now going to discuss the state grant contract for youth services. Call on Todd. Welcome.
I'm Todd Savage, Assistant Director of Youth Services. This grant contract is a 5-year block, $45,000 to supplement a youth service officer salary. So we've had for many, many years. They haven't increased the amount. It's been $9,000 for several years. But it's money that's available to us. The only thing they require is a couple of reports a year and fix their money.
No matching funds on our part.
I'm sorry, what?
No matching funds on our part.
No much.
No. Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Second. Mr. Piercy, Commissioner Dodd is the second. Is there any other questions for Mr. Savage? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have the Recovery Court Grant Contract with the Tennessee Department of Mental Health. How much? Lisa's just going to carry it.
That's what we'll
Okay.
do. This grant, we've had several years. The first one is $107,500. It's the Tennessee Certified Recovery Court Program. It is for next year's budget. It's already included in the budget. And so this is a request to accept. There's no matching funds.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Mr. Johnson is a second. Is there any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next on the agenda is the Veterans Treatment Court Grant Contract with the Tennessee Department of Mental Health. You do that one also?
Yes, sir. Similar to the previous one, this is for $70,000. Again, it's for next year, and it's requested to accept the grant for the Veterans Treatment Court.
No matching funds.
No matching funds.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Johnson?
Second.
I think we was I saw Mr. Soch. Okay. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd? Yes. Mr. Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Okay. Now we're going to look at an authorization to dispose of the SCRAM monitoring system for adult probation.
I'll do that.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is if you will recall, for those that were here last year, we got into that business of purchasing the SCRAM units, and were, by court order, they would come down to probation and we would put those on. Basically, we are getting out of that business, and if you, what I handed out to the members tonight is the new law dealing with the indigent fund. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing here tonight, but it just kind of shows you what the process is of those who want to declare in front of the judge that they're indigent. So it shows that with the new piece of legislation, that the counties now will be paying 50% as well as the state. They've improved and put more money into that fund. But so we're getting out of that business. We were losing about $160,000 a year because our probation department was not actually set up to track these people and try to get them to pay for it. So we're getting out of the business and turning it over to this company out at
Tennessee Recovery and Monitoring.
Tennessee Recovery and Monitoring. You'll see they have offered to purchase this Graham units that we have for $51,052.
I think it's like 500 per unit.
$51,000.
We have them, but this company is the only one who is authorized
In Rutherford County.
to use them.
So they have an office that they've opened right across the street from the courthouse here. So it'll be close enough to send, the judge will send people down to this location and get the ankle bracelets put on. They also deal with the alcohol monitoring devices and the installation to be put into the cars, and even GPS, which the judges were actually wanting. We didn't do the GPS nor the devices put into cars. All we did was the alcohol monitoring bracelets. So we're just getting out of the business and selling that surplus property.
We're not contracting with
No,
them.
we are not contracting with anyone. Based on the class action lawsuit against us last year, we were prohibited in contracting with anybody in Rutherford County. So we're not contracting with anybody, we're just getting out of the business.
We had a thorough presentation in public safety. Since I'm public safety rep, I'll speak up about that. And, basically, our judges are in favor of continuing having the bracelets. And of course, what that does is instead of paying $60, $65 a day for somebody to be confined out at the jail, I think it's about, $50 a month.
Yeah, this is all pretrial. It's all
Well,
pretrial offenders.
Right.
They haven't set their court date yet, but the judges want to go ahead and put a monitor on them, so that's what this is designed for.
And the judges are in favor of this now, since we've got this state legislation that's come down. But it's about all I can tell you for now.
For the indigent. I mean, it's not like free to everybody.
Right.
Yeah, it will cause the judges to set another court date to come back in and try to let that person prove whether they're indigent or not.
Right.
The amount they're offering to give, what percentage is that of the investment we've got in it initially?
The bracelets that we have were donated by the PCP or whatever
Yeah, the company
that we did have.
that we
But we-
contracted with.
But we had to pay $600 per unit to get them refurbished. So
That's what this guy's got to do.
he's got to pay to have it refurbished, but he's going, so for us, we're going to get 500 of our 600 back.
And there's a limited number of people who can actually purchase those things.
Right, he's the only one in Rutherford County that is going to be an authorized user. Now, he's not as I understand it, Stephen may know.
I think there's 3 in the state.
There's 3 in the state,
Yeah.
and this one is the only one authorized in Rutherford County. That's my understanding.
I understand too.
Okay, y'all heard the proposal.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Piercy,
Second.
Commissioner Johnson, I appreciate that. Are there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Pete?
Yes, motion carries. And next on the agenda is the general fund budget transfer for emergency management. Ms. Tim, welcome.
Good evening, all.
As you see on line 307, that's our communications budget. We had allocated $18,000 for the year. We've run short, as you see. We've already spent $17,242 with several months left of expected expenditures to finish out the year. So we're requesting to take out $2,250 out of our communications line 708 to move to the communications line in order for us to spend expected expenditures before the end of the fiscal year.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Johnson,
Second.
Commissioner Dodd. Are there any other questions for Tim? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch? Yes. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodge?
Yes.
Commissioner Fee?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Tim. Okay, now we have a general fund transfer for the adult detention area. Sheriff of Preble One. Welcome.
Running out of utility money. I need $110,000 out of all these other line items to put into my 452. It's all within the same budget.
So put them on a diet.
The food, I need to put them on water diet or shower diet and everything else. Eating everything.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Johnson.
On that first line item, just the math isn't working for me. The food prep, says the original budget was 25,000, amended in actual. So in the actual, is that not how much you've spent?
We've spent. Yeah, that is a mistake. Commissioner, I'm sorry. That's how much we have.
I think that's what's available.
That's what's available.
Okay.
I usually get a quality check from them.
I don't
We've
see
been
these
busy.
prior
So yes, so it's just the ending balance that should be changed.
So that's going to see us through the end of the year.
We did the best average we can do. Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch? Yes. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodge?
Yes.
Commissioner Fee?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Trevor. Okay, we have a proposal from Siemens for the adult detention facility. Welcome, folks.
It's on here somewhere. I need the mouse instead of the clicker. That may not be turned on. Maybe there's a turn on.
Should be on the bottom of the toolbar.
Yeah, it's on. It was there. There it is. Thank you. Slideshow at the top. There it is. From the beginning. There you go. Thank you. Chairman P, Vice Chair Gooch, members of the Budget Committee, and Ron Graham. I'm account manager at Siemens. This is Allison Shea, our Atlantic Zone sales manager. Appreciate the opportunity to come before the Budget Committee. A couple of weeks ago, we were before the Property Management Committee. So several of you sit on that committee, and appreciate your unanimous support for us to move forward with the project. Our purpose today in being here for this presentation is, one, give you an overview of performance contracting and why we're recommending that as a vehicle to help the adult detention facility make some improvements and reduce their operating cost. We'll try to show you how that works with that process, how that works to make these improvements in a budget neutral, not using any capital fund project. Third, we'll kind of talk about what we've done to date, where we are, give an example of a project in Montgomery County that we use this same approach on. And last, we made a presentation to the mayor, Sheriff Fitzhugh and others. And in our process to move forward, what we're asking for today is a recommendation by your committee to make the presentation for the full commission to talk about a project development agreement between Siemens and the county. Okay. So an overview of performance contracting, what we're looking at is making improvements to the adult detention facility that will increase efficiencies, reduce operating costs, and generate savings. And then we take those savings that are generated by more efficient equipment and systems to use to make those improvements with. And then Siemens will guarantee those savings during the contract period. That's the important part. So first I want to just kind of show you how this looks for a case in Montgomery County, Tennessee, where we improved a lot of the facilities in Montgomery County, including their correction facility.
We started with a baseline over here on the left-hand side of their utility expenses. Just like we just told you, other expenses are going up. Same thing with Montgomery County. We implemented a project, and this $464,000 a year was the first year savings that Siemens guaranteed to Montgomery County. Those savings increased over time. Over a 15-year term, we were able to make $5.1 million in capital improvements to the Montgomery County facilities here. And over this 15-year period, we guaranteed $8.7 million in operational savings. So in this slide, we're just kind of showing how we looked at guarantees of electrical demand savings, natural gas, water savings, and then how over each year of the contract, we were guaranteeing an increasing amount of savings to Montgomery County, getting this $8.7 million over this 15-year period. So with this knowledge, Mayor Ketron basically invited us to take a look at the adult detention facility, see if we could apply that same strategy there. So we basically looked at all the utility expenses. That facility is using about 30% more energy than other similar facilities in the country that we researched. We have quite a bit of experience with correctional facilities in the country. Actually, in your presentation materials, I included a partial list of all the correctional facilities in the country that Siemens works with. Secondly, we came back to Mayor Ketron saying, hey, we can develop this project. We need to enter into this agreement. He led us to the process to go through these committees and to the commission to come out with approval for him to execute a development agreement with us. So that's kind of our purpose in being here today. And there are 3 outcomes from a project development agreement. So this is done in partnership with the county, where we set out objectives for what we're going to look at. The first outcome would be that Siemens goes out, brings in our engineering team, our vendors, our suppliers, goes out to the facility, develops a list of project scope, and these savings will have firm fixed price costs to come back to the county with, no change orders. And we would then enter into a contract with the county and move forward with the project. That's outcome number 1. Second outcome is that we go out and we go to develop a project that'll meet the objectives. We can't meet those objectives. We just kind of part ways and walk away. The third outcome is that we do go out, develop a scope of a project that will allow all the savings to fund the project at no capital budget expense over this term of 15 years. And the county, for some reason, decides not to go forward with the project. And that outcomes, the county would reimburse Siemens for a portion of the development costs of the project. In step number 1, the desirable outcome, all those development costs, all our engineering time to develop firm fixed price from all our suppliers and vendors, all those costs are rolled into the total project cost and paid for with savings. So last time at the Property Management Committee, we didn't have this slide. We wanted to kind of provide this slide to budget to show you that over these 15 years of a construction period, these areas over here to the left are the actual savings from energy and operational savings to generate these total project savings. And we got those numbers by looking at your energy, water, what we feel really comfortable as far as generating savings from a project. And then we looked at these total program costs to finance about a $1.5 million project. And that's just an idea about ballpark from walking the facility, looking at opportunities that we see to generate cost savings. I think we heard earlier about a 2.66% rate. We've got out there on the street, did some solicitation. We can get easy at 2.7, so we're all in the ballpark there. And then there's some escalation rates. And anyway, it just shows you that the program costs and the operational savings are paying for themselves. So it doesn't require any capital budget dollars from the county at all. So that's how that works. Obviously, during the construction period, you don't make any payments. You don't make payments until year one, and there's payments over the, I think there's quarterly payments. But anyway, that's how that actually works. I just want to make sure that you kind of got that idea how that works as a financing vehicle. So I wanted to kind of compare, as far as budget and procurement and those kind of things, how your current path you're on. Ms. Acton had turned in a budget request for some new laundry equipment. I think it's a little over $80,000 to get some new dryers and washers. If you approve that, you do get the new laundry equipment. Of course, you're going to have construction to get that equipment installed. There's maybe some budget to go along with getting, this expansion done. It's also, with your existing technology, is going to increase your operating cost. Then there's going to be some unfunded budget costs out there that, the center is aware of, but they haven't submitted budget requests. They've got, over 20-year-old HVAC sitting on the roof of a medical facility and 15 housing unit. It's at the end of its useful life, very inefficient equipment. There's more of that type of equipment in the facility. And then there's these unsolved issues in the facility. One is like toilet cell abuse, where the inmates flush toilets to flood the cells and leads to safety risks in the facility. These higher than normal water consumption, sewer rates, and then added work for the maintenance staff to go. And this happens 2 to 3 times a week at the facility. What we're talking about is delivering a turnkey project that can get your new laundry facility, the expansion of the room, but it also gives you new type of technology, such as ozone treatment to reduce the amount of hot water. We do all the project management oversight. Some of these unfunded issues we address now. That will basically limit some failure risk of this old equipment in the facility. It's going to reduce maintenance and operational costs as it's more efficient equipment than you currently have in place. And it's going to reduce the need for them to come in next year for a budget request for HVAC equipment, say in this particular example. For some of these other unsolved issues in the facility that aren't really equipment-based now that we're replacing, there's technologies such as introducing this cell water control technology where you can limit the amount of flushes in facilities. And we've done these in other projects. We did this in other projects in the country where they can't flood their cells anymore. It also reduces water and sewer costs, minimizes safety and risks, and reduces maintenance costs. And then there's, I got this thing here, how we got that on there. Anyway, and then there's other technologies where you get an operational savings, maintenance savings, certain technologies such as LED lighting. There's no LED lighting in the cells now, so that would be a longer life product with lower energy use, less maintenance on the product, less involvement of maintenance staff going into a cell to change ballasts and bulbs and things like that. So those are the kind of technologies we're looking at. Again, we're just saying, current path, you've got these upgrades, value, whatever they are, $80,000 to a budget, tied to a budget request. You're going to have operational expense increases. I think we just heard that the operational costs continue to rise at the facility. There's these challenges of things that they need to maybe replace and remain unfunded. And then there's this risk of failure as you get this old equipment. You're constantly at risk of these equipment failing and having emergency expenses, addressing that as an emergency basis. So our path, this value of 1.5 is just something out there. We're not saying this is what it is. We've got to develop the project, come up with this code, but it's going to be no capital dollars. It's going to reduce operational costs, reduce future capital needs, reduce the risk of equipment failure. As we forward, oops, too far. Back up, back. Where's previous? Keyboard.
Up arrow on the keyboard.
Too many tools.
Oh, that's back to these ones. There we go. All right. Sorry. So I guess what I wanted to say, I've got some handouts of the presentation. There's additional information in these materials, such as our list of qualifications. There's also the statute, as it brought up in the Property Management Committee, energy services are procured just like architect or engineer services, where it's based on the qualifications of the firm, not low bid. So I've got that statute in there for you. I've got examples of the technologies that I discussed a little bit in the back there. So I just wanted to kind of include all that information in your packet so you have kind of what the presentation was. But I want to say where we are right now. So if you look up here, we've done the preliminary analysis. Siemens has determined that we have a project here. You know, we can fund a project with savings. There's no question based on the energy use at the facility, water use at the facility. We've done all our homework. We've done our site visit with an energy engineer, and we're here to we sign this project development agreement. And that allows, like I said, us to go into this facility, really develop real detailed cost numbers, so that we would have a firm fixed price and change orders to come back to the county with. At that time, Siemens and the county would discuss, executing a contract and moving forward. That's where the delivery and installation comes in, where Siemens takes all the risk at that firm fixed price. We assume the risk that is going to be the price. We manage the whole project. It's all our subs, our vendors, that sort of thing. We can work with local contractors as well. Then at the end, this measurement verification, that's just ongoing after the project. We're constantly monitoring your energy use, making sure there's no spike in some energy cost, that we need to go investigate what's happened. And so we do that on an ongoing basis to make sure we're generating the savings we guarantee to you. And secondly, it allows us to kind of stay involved with the facility and drive additional savings. So, we'll give you a guarantee, but, you're going to generate, most of our projects, everybody generates more savings than what we guarantee. So there's going to be additional savings on top of that as well. So that's kind of where we are. And I guess we're just seeking, Mayor, we're seeking the commission support, your decision to recommend this to the full commission.
Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. In property management, there was a little bit of confusion on the $30,000 of where we were on that timeline. So if we sign the contract for you all to go in and do your evaluation, right, when do we pay that $30,000?
Yep. Okay. So, any of y'all ever bought property where you pay
earnest
money down? You don't actually pay the money. Somebody holds on to a check or something. In this case, we're not holding on to a check, but it's kind of an earnest that the county is intending to go forward with us. We're going to spend, $70,000, $80,000, whatever we're going to spend. It's going to be a considerable amount of money to go and do the development. If we go forward with the project, there's no payment. All those costs of our development just go into the project and are funded with the savings. It's only if we've got this agreement that, yes, we want to work with Siemens, we want to go forward, we're going to invest our time, over the next, few months to develop this project, and we come back and all of a sudden you change your mind and say, we've decided we don't want to buy the property, then that's when we would
That's
take,
when we pay.
That's when we pay the,
Okay.
pay the
Just wanted everybody to
termination.
understand, have a clear understanding of that. So if we choose to back out, then we lose the earnest money of the $30,000, correct?
Correct.
If we choose to go forward, then the 30 is
Just, it doesn't even.
yeah, it's all in the total price. If what was the third thing?
If we can't
If you
develop
can't
a
do it,
project,
if you
we
come back
can't
to
get
us
something
and
that's cash
say
flow.
it's not going to work,
Right.
then we pay nothing.
Correct.
Okay.
So when is the 30,000 paid?
If we came back to you with a project that met all those conditions, we could fund it out of savings, no capital dollars involved out of your budget.
It's after this decision is
Termination.
to all that part.
It's a termination fee.
We'll come back with a proposal for a project at a firm fixed price. If it meets the criteria that it can fund itself through the guaranteed savings over a 15-year term, and you decide you don't want to do it, then we'll send you an invoice for the $30,000 that's agreed to in the project development letter. If you do decide to move forward, the intent is that all of those engineering and design costs are part of the project cost, and they're all absorbed and paid for by the savings. So there would be no invoice for the $30,000 under those conditions.
So basically, all these technologies we bring,
That's what I'm trying
4 to
to
6
figure. At
months.
some point, when it comes back to you all to say, whatever your decision is to be made at that time.
Sounds like 6 months out.
Our intentions, based on where we are now, because we've done as much upfront work as we've done, is that sometime in probably end of July to mid-August to be able to come back with the proposal.
30 days, so if we say no, you're, if you don't meet the guaranteed savings, how do we recoup what your error? Do we reduce?
If after we do the project, we don't meet the performance guarantee, then we cut you a check. We make up the difference. We have done that. We don't like to do that. So if it does come to that, then you're probably going to see a lot of engineering support directly after that to figure out what we need to do and what additional improvements we need to make so that we're not cutting that check for 15 years. Because by contract, we're on the hook for 15 years if we have a miss.
This is similar to what we've done previously in our schools with a lot of our lighting and retrofitting all of our lighting and the savings that we've done in the past. Correct.
So are the baselines based on gallons and however electricity is measured and that's,
Yeah. The baselines are not based on dollars. The baselines are based on units associated with that particular energy type. So gallons, kilowatt hours, therms.
Yeah, going back to this chart, that's, because we can't control TVA's rate increases.
Right.
Something like that. So, but we will be able to control how much energy you're using, how much demand cost you're using, how much natural gas you're saving, how much water you're saving. Those will all be calculated.
Do you go back a year or two, or how, it's just that this is last year's usage?
In order to calculate the cost of energy?
No, I'm just saying, you're back, I'm trying to get baselines.
Oh,
What the
baselines.
baselines are.
Our preference is to have 3 years of energy data
3 years,
to use
okay.
for. Well, we generally will settle on a 12-month consecutive period, but we evaluate 3 years of data to identify the best 12 months that's going to be the most established baseline. But we work in collaboration with you around that. You might say to us, we gave you 3 years, but it's important for you to understand that
We had
this
this
was
huge
going on in this
delay going on
building.
for
Yeah,
4
and
years
so,
and
yeah,
blah,
so it's not a
whatever.
good representation.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Also in property management, there was some questions about whether or not are there other companies that do this like Siemens, and yes, there are. There was questions which the committee instructed me to get with our legal counsel. We checked on that. Under TCA 12-4-110 applies to contracts that are for energy-related services that include energy services and equipment and are for the purpose of reduction of energy costs in public facilities. So that you've already put that in the book. Nick said that the presentation has a slide about utility savings in Montgomery County, presumably because Siemens has entered into a similar agreement with them. It may be worth you confirming with Ron Graham that Montgomery County did not bid these services, instead simply awarded Siemens the contract. Probably, I believe that
They did not.
you called and verified that, and you have verified that as well because you didn't have signed contract. So I think we satisfied that question that came out of Property Management Committee. And I believe you may want to ask the sheriff if he wants to do this.
Mr. Johnson.
The bottom line is, either good, bad, or indifferent, $30,000 is all it'd be costing the county, period, for the,
Is your risk.
yeah. So, what was throwing us in property management is the percentage you were talking about. If we decided not to do it, we charge a percentage. So that's the moot point, right?
That's correct.
That's
correct.
So the bottom line is,
30,000 is the risk.
Okay.
Otherwise, everything's funded by state
Only if we
guarantee.
decide not to.
That's correct.
I think the sheriff does like to speak,
Well,
or would like to speak.
Yeah, I'll just say this, this is something that we were looking at that we were gonna have to do. This is beyond our inmate labor skills as far as what we were gonna have to do with water valves and whatnot. We've had 2 toilets overflow this week and 1 shower head. Unfortunately, it's on the 5th floor, it goes all the way down to the 1st floor. So you can imagine we got 4 floors underneath and plus the ground floor and the offices that are getting flooded. I don't mind the shower head as much as I do the toilet. So it does become a problematic. We were looking at putting valves on and whatnot. We had explored this and the cost was going to be astronomical for us to try to do this, bid it out and get somebody in to do this. We're very much in favor of this. We've talked with them extensively on what they're able to do. And with some of the projects that we've got coming up on an old building like this, this fits right in with the plans that we've got. And it's going to be some, from what we're seeing, tremendous savings for us.
Commissioner Piercy.
Back a couple of 3 years ago, before you took office, was there not some type of valves put on some of the water uses in the showers to limit the amount of water that inmates could be used?
I don't know what they told you.
I don't know, but I'm not, no. I remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It's different, sure.
We put boots on, they put some boots on.
Boots on, but there's
To
nothing to regulate.
increase the water pressure.
There's
to the
water
upper
pressure, but there's
floors.
not, the problem we had is the way the building is built, is the water's coming from the ground up, and it turns on, it's goes all the way up and then comes all the way back down. So, but there's nothing there that's regulating.
There's no limitation to
No,
none
sir.
of it.
No, sir.
I guess I should say we were told that.
I suspect you all been told a lot, but that is not there, so.
When the shed, with the shed.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Johnson.
You need a motion to set this in motion.
Can I ask a couple of questions? Am I understanding this, that we're going to be paying principal and interest payments, and those payments should be offset by decrease in operational costs?
That's
Is that
correct.
what we would do?
You'd be able to pay the entirety out of your existing O&M budget.
Okay. And Sheriff, you mentioned in your budget that CTAS was going to do a future analysis of how long the building would last at some point?
We're on their list for
Okay.
them to come in. We haven't gotten a time.
Okay. So if they come back and say the building's going to last 5 more years and we're on the hook for 15,
Well, primarily what we're looking there at is with the existing population, looking at is there a way we can expand or to make it bigger.
Since we own that
Okay.
property.
Since we own that property, we're looking at more expanding as opposed to just starting all over. And so that's what we're interested in, to see what feasibility we've got.
Okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner Davis.
Well, I was going to say that from the standpoint of being on property management, what was impressive to us, and I think the reason it came out unanimous, is that this is a way to take a 30-year-old building and make it a 2019 building with the capital improvements and things like that. So it did get unanimous support from the property management, and that was for the main reason, is that we take this old building and make it kind of like new. It to last us a lot longer.
Commissioner Allen.
This section for this year. So, because when we toured your facility, I guess a couple of months ago, you showed us the laundry area and kind of talked about the plans that you had there. So, and we had this conversation about buying better equipment. Would that be smarter than additional equipment? So I'm completely on board with the direction you're going here. My question is, does this plan in any way impact your short-term budget for this year and requests that you've made? Are there things that you will hold off on or do differently, or are you going to proceed with your plan to
No.
expand?
Well, as far as laundry, we were looking at laundry equipment and everything else, but tying in with what they're able to do, we can get it through Siemens, and they can do it for us in the expansion, so that takes us out of it. And then that way, on our utility bills that we've got now, then that will pay for that and then other things too.
I just didn't know how the timelines were going to fall into place, if they were going to be able to
The
get.
money's there.
The money's there.
But I don't know what's gonna happen.
That's it.
So, you know, I won't spend it if I don't need it, you know that, but.
But I've got a plan on the eventuality that if this does not come and the equipment just dies, then I've got 900 inmates we've got to do laundry for, so
we might be able to come in and if we were proceeding on this project, then they, get that first and this is something.
That's what I was thinking, maybe the larger we go, the first things you can hit.
So then we would prioritize what we're doing.
And when we come back with the proposal, we'll come back with a proposed implementation schedule, and we've known throughout this that that was the high priority item. That would be at the top of the list on the coordination schedule.
I move we proceed with this.
Second. And a second. Is there any
I think,
further?
addressing her concerns there, anything can be tweaked, and the little rough edges, talking about the launder and all that and everything, that's just little minor glitches that can be taken care of, so we're on board.
One question I've got is where you guys been the last 15 years?
As far as the mechanism of it, if this is all wrapped up in August, possibly, does it go back to the two committee processing commission, or is the authority given to the mayor? How is that?
I think it's got to come back to the commission because you're practically authorizing debt.
So it'll go back to property management and then to the budget and then to the full commission?
However you go, but the full commission is going to have to authorize the debt.
Okay.
Commissioner Dodds.
I'm in support of this, I just need some clarity as well. Do we go to the bond market and or do we pay you over the 15 years?
No, you would secure the debt. So.
Typical bond market?
Yes, you can go to the bond market. It's not uncommon. Sometimes we'll run a procurement. For example, coming out of the last committee meeting, there was a question about, would Siemens Financial Services have an appetite? We know they have an appetite. We're still waiting to get kind of an indicative rate from them. We've also gotten an indicative rate. Bank of America would have an appetite. So we can also explore what the other options are in the market outside of bond issuance. So we can work to facilitate that with you.
At the best rate with Congress bond.
I mean, we're going to the market anyway.
Okay, so here, I guess this committee or the commission would give me the authority to sign this development agreement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because
at
we're
this time.
there at that little orange ball. And then you all come back at the end of August or whenever
Right.
you do that detailed analysis and come back and go through the regular committee, because at that point in time, we're arranging financing and then you give me authority to sign that contract at that point. Okay.
And if you're already doing a bond issuance, we can work with you as we're developing and it's starting to materialize around numbers, so you can start to float, okay, if there's an additional $1 million for this project or whatever it is, so when you're making those decisions, we can be sharing. It won't be firmed up necessarily, but preliminary and ongoing information around how the numbers are looking on our side as well. Because you're right, if you're already doing an issuance, that's going to be your best rate.
They're authorizing
those costs.
me to sign the.
Mr. Johnson, will that be part of your motion?
Yeah, they do.
To authorize the mayor to
That's
sign.
That's part of my second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, please call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come back.
I'll see you next week.
You can move down here.
Okay, next on the agenda is the ambulance service, and I think they have a transfer they need to make.
Bond.
Melanie, Carl, good to see y'all.
Probably.
Between there.
We have your copy, Jeff. You need a copy? I've got one.
I got a copy.
We definitely want them to come to the next school board meeting.
Good evening. We have 4 transfers. We have depleted funds in our gasoline line item. We would like to transfer $10,000 from in-service training, $10,000 from communications, $15,000 from utilities, for a total of $35,000 to transfer into our gasoline line. Let me go ahead with the rest of them.
Unless I hear an objection, you can put them all together here.
Okay. We're requesting to move $35,000 from our paraprofessionals payroll into our supervisors payroll. We've had a total of 4 personnel leave, and we've had to pay the accumulated annual time to them. So that left us with a deficit. And we're also requesting to move $25,000 from our part-time payroll into the overtime payroll. And last but not least, we're requesting to move $7,000 from our convalescent transport paraprofessionals payroll, and $5,000 of that into the part-time payroll for convalescent, and $2,000 into the overtime on the convalescent division.
And you've heard the request.
It's all in your present budget.
It is, yes.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Johnson?
Second.
Commissioner Pearson? Are there any questions?
Can you explain the convalescent payroll moving part?
Yes,
Why are
sir.
we taking it out of one, putting it in another?
The 133, the paraprofessionals, that's our full-time. We didn't start until September, but we had budgeted for a full year. That was just for one truck to go all year. We have been using 2 and sometimes 3 trucks a day, which makes us use overtime and the part-time personnel.
For convalescents, right?
Correct.
Was a pilot just for one truck there?
I believe so, but we did have
I wonder.
funding for part-time and overtime in case it grew, which it has.
Snow goes
We,
through September, the pilot does.
correct, yes.
I wasn't sure about one truck or more. Mike never told me that. Director Hudgens said he
I'll
looked into
get
that.
back with you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Hearing none, let's call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. He'll call you.
He won't be the only one.
You now are going to discuss a litter collection contract with the Department of Transportation for the workhouse. Superintendent Coker. Welcome.
Evening. Well, it's that time of year again to talk about the litter contract, also known as the Cool Hand Loop contract. Yearly, we meet with Tennessee Department of Transportation and negotiate our contract to pick up litter. This year's a little bit different. Historically, they give us a list of which highways to pick up, and they give us a number of dollars per mile that they'll pay us. And this year, instead of giving us just a list of highways that they want done, they want to give us all of them. So, and they want to raise that from $36.50 a mile to $75 a mile. And they want us to do the interstates too. So, at the interstate at $100 a mile. So, our contract would go from 32, I think it was somewhere around in there, 80, to 83,000 going back into the general fund budget. So, if you all are good with that, then
How many more trucks will they take?
well, it shouldn't take that many more trucks. It's just going to take some that run. That's been the problem.
Can we lease those, Mayor?
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, that's in this proposed budget. To get a new van, put the light bars on, make sure, because I want to make sure if we're going out on the interstate, and you all adopt this, I want to make sure that those, of course, we talked about it at your board meeting the other morning, that it's just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, on Jefferson Pike
More so.
than it is on the interstate, right?
It is.
Because there's no place,
Nowhere to run.
they're picking up trash, and they come around the curve, there's no place for those guys to go. But I want as many lights and vests and whatever reflective they can wear.
And the state will still provide us with all the vests and the safety equipment, but not the vehicles. So.
Yeah, and he does have, and your budget, you have five new vehicles he wants to use.
And 2 of those will be vans that we'll be using out of.
Because he has to carry a trailer with a porta potty on it that's required, for those guys.
Yes, sir.
Who's been doing the extra, do you know?
It was contracted on the interstates.
Private contract?
Contractor, and it wasn't getting done. And if you've driven back and forth between Davidson County and coming back into Murfreesboro, it's just nasty. I mean, the traffic has gotten worse, and the trash is just, it's bad. I guess that's why they canceled the contract and felt like that go back to the local community and see if they were willing to do that, I like, my goal is I told you and your board, I like to be known as the cleanest county in the state of Tennessee, right?
And like I was telling the mayor and our board too, you drive through certain states and occasionally you'll come across inmates out working, giving back to their community, and it always makes you feel a little better that they're doing that. And we do have a high number of population that we can't send out with local municipalities and just their supervisors. We have to send them out with a member of our own staff, and that would be with the litter pickup is what we do that with our own staff. So.
You said you've got enough crew to handle it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We just gave it kind of a little bit of run over the past couple weeks just to see how much more we could get done, and literally we doubled that amount that we were doing normally in just a couple weeks. So we've got someone out there, as opposed to just a few hours on Monday. Now we've got a crew out there 5 days a week. So. And that took a little bit of management as far as our staff, but we'll be able to do it and see if we need to adjust that later on.
The only thing you don't pick up is tires.
Well, tires, things that are in the actual roadway, we would contact Tennessee Department of Transportation, mobile meth labs, anything that's toxic, dangerous, dead animals, things of that nature. So.
And what did the contract amount go from? Again,
It'd go from, we're about $32,000 a year right now that we get from that, and it'll go to $83,000. So $46.50 a mile on state highways. We'll go to $75 a mile, and then we'll be doing $100 a mile on interstates, and that'll be 24 and 840. So. And like the mayor said, honestly, we do a lot of safety training anyway with these guys before we ever send them out. But places like Jefferson Pike are as dangerous as the interstate can be because there is no shoulder. And our vans are out there too. So kind of looking forward to it if we decide to go that route. And extra money is always good. So.
Commissioner Gooders.
I'll move that we accept the contract.
Any motion?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Todd. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Pete?
Yes. Motion carries. Next, we have a general fund budget amendment for Correctional Work Center, and I don't think Mr. Coke also. Or Lisa, you're going to...
I'm doing the next one.
Okay.
Yes, so
Yeah.
Well, then you're up.
Commissioner distracted.
You're on.
I'm not going to mention this amendment act like it didn't even happen.
Okay, this amendment we're bringing forward has to do with the inmate that did serve time for you and contracted meningitis.
Meningitis.
You want to take this and give them the backstory? Mine's real easy. I need $42,000.
He came from the jail, came over to the workhouse. The first day he was there, he collapsed with meningitis. Dr. Rudd took him back to the jail for observation because he has 24-hour care there. And come to find out he had some form of meningitis. Got him over to St. Thomas. St. Thomas didn't have the equipment to determine the strain of meningitis, so we sent him to Centennial. That was the last week of October. He was in there with meningitis. We thought he was going to be paralyzed from the waist down the rest of his life, on a ventilator, et cetera. We were going to be on the hook for that because he was in our care, custody, and control at the time that he contracted the disease. So the bill that, when we started working on this with Dr. Rudd, the bill, like in March, 1st of March, was already $1.5 million at Centennial. And so we sent Dr. Rudd down to talk to the CEO, HCA, and he was able to negotiate it down to $250,000 from what was owed. So we transferred.
And get him out.
and we got him out, sent him out to the nursing home at Community Care. Got him out there, and Terry and her staff started working with him, getting him up and getting him rehabilitated. As of today, at the board meeting at the nursing home, Community Care, she told us he's still there, but he's ready to go home. We're just waiting on TennCare for approval so he can be discharged. And I believe the sheriff shared with us that all of his time has been erased, so he doesn't have to go back to either one of the facilities. So his crime has been erased and not erased, but his time it's been satisfied. That's right. How much satisfied for? And so I'll turn it back over to Ms. Nolan so she can explain to you.
And sorry, Mayor, but just to clarify that this disease that he had was in a dormant stage when he came in, so it's not something he contracted at either location. It's just one of those things that you can't foresee or
He was a chronic
test
drug
for.
user. And,
Homeless.
and we just happened to go by and pick him up because he didn't make his court date. So it's too bad we found him.
So,
It's a good thing we were able to save his life.
Yeah, we did.
That is true.
And we did. And he does have family, and he's got a young daughter. His mother had stepped in to take over power of attorney, so he's going to be able to go back, and we're going to get him up and walking, and he'll go back to, let's hope, to a better life than what he had.
so we need $42,000 to pay Community Care for his stay there. And the offset on another journey with our change in insurance director, with Ms. Miller there, she found that Community Care had not been billed correctly. And so the end of that story is that they owed the county over $100,000 for their premiums for their customers. So this, we're using to offset that liability that they owe us.
So a net gain of 68 for this.
I mean, so we need to pay Community Care
yeah.
so they can pay us back for part of their health insurance premium.
It'll go back to fund balance.
And it's coming out of here, it's going to ultimately go into the health insurance fund.
We're having to reduce fund balance by 42.
Yes.
That's correct.
But it'll wash out.
Yes.
Yes.
You're right.
Plus.
We owe it.
Plus.
We owe it.
We owe it,
And
but
they owe us.
they owe us more.
Right.
So.
And the beginning in January, before all this happened, when we were working with them, they were going to start paying us
On a monthly basis.
on a monthly basis starting July because they were not prepared to be able to pay us back all that.
How did it get that they were not paying the insurance premiums correctly?
They were not billed correctly.
They were not billed correctly?
Yeah, from insurance department, risk management department.
They paid what they were billed.
So we got all that under control. Is there ever an audit from anyone that to make sure people are getting billed correctly in departments?
They are audited
They-
by independent CPA firm.
Joe, is it Joe Hastings?
Joe Hastings.
Joe Hastings is and he sits on the board at Community Care. Jimmy does.
Oh, then it's not Joe Hastings, then it would be Clements. That's
Or
all.
Clements.
It's Matlock. Yeah, that's what he said. That's what he said, Clements.
Okay, thank you.
That's what he could be
Got
on
another
board
board
audit.
member. Got another board member back there, so. Thank you.
Well, you've heard the discussion.
Motion to approve this.
Commissioner Johnson, I hear a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, is there a second? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Superintendent Coe.
Thank y'all.
Okay, now we have a general fund budget amendment for planning, and Lisa, you're gonna do that one for
Yes,
us,
sir.
huh? Okay.
And this is request, they believe their gas line will be short before, by the end of the year, and so they're requesting $500 from our pool gas account.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Okay. Now, we are going to discuss the lease proposal for vehicles for the upcoming fiscal year. I'm not sure who's gonna open that for us.
Yes, sir. I'll go ahead and start out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have representatives here tonight. They'll identify themselves from Enterprise Corporate Fleet, which I believe y'all been knocking on our door prior to me getting here. And after I came in, we started talking, and it seemed to make sense. So I had to go out and meet with each one of the different departments. Our fleet is chronically aging. I think the oldest one we had in the fleet was a 1991 Crown Vic. From the safety standpoint, I was very concerned. I did send out to you all this past week emails to show you what just one department, Preble, had put together, just what we had paid over a 5-year period, what we paid this past year in maintenance on these old vehicles. You know, sometimes we're having to put a transmission into a vehicle that it's not worth the $2,000 of the transmission. As in Mr. Cope's position, he's got a bus he's transporting prisoners in. It's really scary to transport prisoners and even staff. So I think the proposal you've seen is you've gone through every department. They have put information together, each department, on the number of vehicles needed. So I'll turn it over to Enterprise at this point in time. And if you will, introduce yourself and your colleague.
So I'm Mary Elizabeth, and this is Steve. And I know we've met a couple folks in here before already. I think we were at the...
Sorry, does Steve have a last name?
He does.
Yeah, okay.
My last name is Rowe.
Next.
Yeah, my last name is Rowe, R-O-E.
Thank you.
We had before come to the Property Management Committee and then also the Public Safety Committee, and so I figured out the other one. And in the process, in the last several weeks, we have been working with the different department heads, like Mayor mentioned, to get what they were looking for from a budget standpoint for their vehicles. So we've met with Paws, we've met with the Sheriff's Department, we've met with the CWC, we've met with Juvenile Detention, we've spoken to Wayne over at the County Garage, Planning and Engineering, Facilities Maintenance, and EMS. So I think that was the list of the departments as far as the ones needing vehicles. And basically what the mayor was saying is right. You know, we partner with other entities across the nation, about over 1,000 government partners, just to help them get in a better position with their fleet. One of the things we noticed was the safety as well. The average age of your fleet is about 20 years old. And so most of them, maybe not most, but a lot of them are missing and lacking some of the standard safety features at this point. And so that was one of the main concerns when we started this conversation, probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago at that point. So after we've been to those other 2 committees at this point, we're just coming in front of the Finance Committee tonight to, I know Lisa had sent out the information that I think you guys are looking at the state contract comparison on your iPads possibly. So tonight was just an opportunity for us to come out here and answer any questions for you, talk a little bit more about the program, depending on the questions that you may have. And in the long run, just hoping to continue the conversation in order to get in front of the commission when your budget goes live. So, you want to go with that?
I saw this presentation, or at least parts of it, is public safety. And one thing that I wasn't aware of until they brought it to us is that when they get these vehicles, say for the sheriff's department, it's already got the lights, everything on there, sirens, bells and whistles. Now, the only question, and I forgot to ask this, are the cameras also in this?
Cameras are, but our computers will be put in by
Right,
us.
right. The computer, and what, we use those tough books now, or what?
Tough books.
Tough books.
And the rocket
Rocket
modems we will have to put in, but it doesn't take that long.
Everything else is in there, and that kind of surprised me, because I thought we would be looking at additional money on these just from, leasing the vehicles. So.
And just to piggyback on that, if that's okay, all of the vehicles that we've spoken to the different departments about, all of their equipment will be, when they get the vehicle, it'll be ready to drive. So the pause unit, for example, when it has to get the larger piece of equipment on the back of it, we facilitate and do all of that. It's all factored into the lease cost. And so when it gets to the pause department, he's ready to go out. Same thing with the correctional work centers. You guys are just talking about the vehicles that they need for litter pickup. We will facilitate the striping, the lights, the whatever else we need on those vehicles to make sure they're ready and road safe for that type of application. So yes, that all of the equipment will be taken care of beforehand.
Thank you.
With Lisa and I, we were talking a few weeks ago, and what you guys are looking at is just where we compared with the state contract.
You might want to walk them through, because there was a lot of questions.
You sent it though, right?
It's on their iPads.
It's on their iPads, okay. So I'll just let myself and Steve have a copy then, and then want to make sure I brought that as well in case we had technology issues, so there you go. So what you guys are looking at, and this is what Lisa, we wanted to do just to kind of prove the concept and make you feel comfortable and confident that Enterprise Fleet Management was a beneficial way to go for the county when it comes to your vehicles moving forward. So the first page you have or the first page on your iPads is going to be a state contract comparison. I know currently the county buys its vehicles from the state contract. Moving forward, Enterprise would be your provider of vehicles, and so you wouldn't have to go to the state contract. And one thing that I wanted to mention that Lisa and I talked about today was that Enterprise is one of the awarded fleet management vendors for Sourcewell, which the county is part of Sourcewell. It used to be called the NJPA, and I'm sure you use it for other things across the county. So it's already been bid out. The due diligence has been there. It's been vetted. And so that's something that the county would be able to piggyback off of versus having to go out and bid every single vehicle at this point in time. So again, all in all, this is just showing you the different vehicles that we've looked at for the county so far. So again, you can see the different departments there on the left, the type of the vehicles they're looking at. As far as state contract comparison, you can see what that cost would be with the state contract, what that would be with Enterprise Fleet Management, and then you can see the difference. So for the most part, we're ahead of the game within the state contract. On total, if you add that up, it's about $3,000 better than the state contract on those vehicles. And then also, I wanted you to see what it would look like as a cash purchase if you guys were to go out and purchase these 41 vehicles right now, along with the aftermarket equipment that would be required up front to get those vehicles on the road. So all in all, it'd be a little under $1.5 million for the county to actually purchase these 41 vehicles. Does that make any questions on that, or does that make sense?
Only thing I'll point out is,
Yeah.
having been on budget for several years, is we've been spending around $1 million a year on vehicles, and we can get, Sheriff, around 20 at the most, something like that. So you're talking, that's pretty close. That's we're talking 60
That was just
vehicles.
$1 million for the sheriff, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
about $1 million, $1.2 million for 20 is what we were spending.
Well, we didn't give anybody else vehicles. That's
That's the problem.
no, well, we actually did. We
That's why we
have
got
funded ambulances and a fire truck or two here or there, but
What is the length of this agreement year-wise?
For us, as far as it's based on different terms for the different vehicles, the master lease agreement is something that's entered into as just, I don't know if you want to explain it any better, but it's just entered into as a partnership to start with, because each vehicle has its own term. Some of the vehicles that we've talked about would be on 3-year, 4-year, 5-year leases, whatever makes the most sense from a total cost of ownership based on the different vehicle it is and its application. Is that where your question was going, or was it a different?
How long will they keep the vehicles before they get a new one?
Right, so it just depends on the type of vehicle. So they could keep it 2 years, they could keep it 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years.
Let's take the 2019 Ford F-250 4x4 Crew Cab.
So that one-
Pull that one for instance.
Yeah, so that one was based on, and if you're looking at the next round of the worksheet that Lisa sent to you, the term, so that's gonna be based on a 60-month term, so a 5-year term. That's where we determine that it holds its value the best. You've gotten the most out of it, but it still has the most from a resale standpoint. Plus the equipment that's on it, you wanna make sure you get the value out of that as well. So when you go down that column of term, you'll see what we recommend putting those vehicles on. So some are a 4-year term, some of them are a 60-month term.
So when our 5 years plays out, what do you do with this vehicle?
So what would happen is the new vehicle would already be on order, so there wouldn't be a gap or a lapse in your coverage wherever that vehicle is. So the new vehicle would come in, the old vehicle would be turned in. So if it was picked up at a dealership, we would literally go, you would drop the old vehicle off when you pick your new one up, and we would arrange to have the old vehicle picked up, sell it on behalf of the county, and then whatever funds that we sell that vehicle for in excess of what it's on our books for would come back to the county.
So in this scenario here, we would anticipate that you guys would have about $4,400 in equity, right? The vehicle itself for about $4,400 more than what it would be on the books for. So you guys would have that additional money, which usually gets rolled into the replacement vehicle.
Can you walk them through, stay with this vehicle and walk them through the lines? 'Cause
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure new to them. We've
Yeah,
looked at it a
absolutely.
lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we just stick with that first vehicle, the EMS vehicle, and if everybody, on your iPads, if you'll take a look at the spreadsheet that she sent that on the tab, it had the first round and second round of vehicles.
It's on page
That's where
2,
we
you're
are.
at that.
So basically what that's doing is we'll walk that vehicle across. So again, it's the F-250 for the EMS department. It would be on a 60-month term, and they requested one of those vehicles. So the monthly payment for that vehicle is $652.51. Its annual sum of payments is right over $7,800. Again, when that vehicle is turned in at 60 months, we still anticipate it to be worth about $14,000. So the difference in what it's on our books for, so the payoff and the anticipated fair market value, like Steve just mentioned, is that $4,400, that anticipated equity at term. So that $4,400 would come back to the county. We would have the option to cut you a check for it, do an invoice credit. Again, like you mentioned, most of our customers just take that money and roll it to the vehicle's replacement, because what it does is it reduces the vehicle payment for the next term. And we also wanted to take into account the aftermarket. So that vehicle had a one-time upfront aftermarket cost of $6,000. It was for the equipment that they needed as far as lights and whether it was radars and things like that we worked through. And then again, the one-time upfront AME cost by quantity. The quantity column only affects really the sheriff's vehicles towards the bottom because of the equipment they needed. So then again, you'll see the annual sum of payments by quantity is that $7,800. And then the year one total cash outlay for that specific vehicle is $13,855. And that's basically a combination of the upfront aftermarket cost and the 1 year's worth of payments. So for that vehicle, specifically for the EMS department in their budget, they could have, or would be requesting right at $14,000 for that vehicle. And then in year two, that vehicle, his cash outlay would go down to $7,830 because the aftermarket at this point has already been paid for because it was due up front. And same thing in year 3, year 4, year 5. You notice in year 6, his payments go down by almost $1,000, and that's in a new vehicle. That's because when we sold his vehicle, the money that came back from that was rolled into his replacement, and so now it lowered his vehicle payments for the next round. And again, that's going out to year 6, 7, 8, and we only did this on an 8-year just for our purposes that day. His payment would go out year 9 and 10 as well, and then again, it would start over in year 11.
When it starts over, would it typically be lower still, or? about the
Typically,
same?
that second round is where it's gonna
Kinda level
start to
out.
flatten out, right?
Okay.
Because you would have taken advantage of it, and if you continue to do it, it's just gonna start flatlining. The one thing this piece doesn't take into account is the operational savings that you'll start to see. When we've come to the Property Management and the Public Safety Committee, we had a different presentation that showed more of a 10-year example of your entire fleet minus the Sheriff's Department, so more of the smaller departments that have a few vehicles in them. And in that spreadsheet, in that worksheet, it was basically showing how your maintenance costs continue to drop because you're operating newer vehicles. They're going to get out of your shop. It's going to allow your maintenance folks to work on heavier pieces of equipment, maybe, or just heavy-duty vehicles instead of routine oil changes, because they shouldn't be in there that much because they're going to be newer vehicles and you're not going to hold on to them as long as 20 years, hopefully. Your fuel costs should also start to go down because you're operating higher fuel efficiency vehicles. Again, with a fleet the age of yours right now, it's not getting great fuel economy at this point, and they're in the shop quite a bit. I think, someone in here mentioned earlier, you're putting transmissions in vehicles that don't really need to have any more money put into them. So what this does is it gets you on a proactive replacement plan. For the most part, it's bringing savings to the county, of anywhere between $500,000 and $600,000 to the county overall. And you're replacing your fleet, you're staying in safer vehicles, you've got better fuel economy, they're not going to be in the maintenance shop as much as they are today. But that was in the other presentation, so when we did this one, it was more so of what does it look like from a payment standpoint as we were starting to get into budgets and what should they request and how does that work. And so this is the model we came up with, first off to show that we are very competitive with the state contract, but second off to show how does this work moving forward. So that went across the first line. Did that answer your question going all the way across the first line?
It did that question.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Stanley.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, one thing too she didn't mention that also is an option is say that truck maybe wasn't driven the mileage that we thought it was going to be driven. And so at the end of that lease, that 5-year lease, it's paid for, we own it, it's a lease purchase. We might decide not to turn that vehicle in because it's got low miles, and we might add one more car to the Sheriff's Department that's being utilized or used more. So we still have that option to either roll it and take that advantage of selling that vehicle and then keeping our fleet up to that 5-year or 6-year or 7-year age where we can still get something out of the vehicle, or we can keep it and keep it 5 or 6 more years, on those low mileage and well kept and maintained, and roll our efforts back into the Sheriff's Department or Ambulance Service or other places that are needing more vehicles.
So after the 5-year lease is up, the vehicle is ours because we pay for it?
No,
It's what you say.
I know, but there's.
5 or 6, depending on whichever the end of the lease.
So it'll have
It's a lease purchase.
So it'll have a reduced book value, a payoff. So at the end of 5 years, because what happens is the model is geared towards replacing those vehicles and holding on to them for a shorter amount of time. So the thought is if you're going to hold on to it for 3 to 5 years, why would you want to pay for the whole portion of the vehicle? So our thought is let's just pay for what you're going to use, which allows us to basically take it to a book value instead of to zero, which gives those lower monthly payments. So again, on the back end, at the end of 5 years, there's going to be a reduced book value or payoff on that vehicle. But again, the anticipated resale value is going to be up here, and that's where that anticipated equity at term column comes into play. So if it's on our books for X, but we sell it for Y, you guys get the in-between part. So
does that happen very often?
Most often with our government customers. You guys are in a unique position. You get great, you buy vehicles very well, better than most of the other public companies that are out there because of the incentives you get. Your mileage patterns are relatively low compared to those other companies. The only difference is you're holding on to them for too long. So instead of being able to recognize the resale and the higher fuel economy, the lower maintenance expenses, you're just holding on to them too long. So then you have no resale. Your maintenance is too high. Your fuel is too high. So all we're trying to do is help you continue to buy them really well, operate them for a shorter amount of time, and then sell them at a premium, which in most cases is coming back to the county in a positive form of equity. Just for a quick example, there are some cases where with pickup trucks right now, just because of where the market is, there are some cases that cities and counties make money on pickup trucks because of the resale market. Now, that's probably not holding on to it for 5 years, but we would come to you with the recommendation of, hey, the market is where you can make money right now. And because there are no early term penalties with our lease structure, we could come to you after year 2 and say, I can get you a brand new pickup truck at this point for lower monthly payments than what you're in today. And that's an option.
And that was a question I had, Mr. Chairman, is that our responsibility? Because sometimes we don't manage our own fleet. That's obvious we haven't.
No.
But you will have somebody assigned to us as our representative, so you'll come back in, check with us, I don't know, annually?
Probably a
or
quarterly basis.
Quarterly basis, and you'll say, hey,
This is our recommendation.
It's our recommendation. You might want to go ahead and, market's real good on that 250 pickup truck based on your mileage.
Right.
You may want to.
And actually, the account manager for the county would be Harold. He's with us tonight as well. So Harold's been with Enterprise for about 6 or 7 years, I think. 8 years, excuse me. Excuse me. But he would be the account manager that would come and sit down, whether it's with the multiple departments or have, if we have one big meeting, or like I've been doing, sitting down with them at different times. Just making sure that their fleet's in a good position, and if there is an opportunity to get out of a vehicle and make money on it, we want to come to you with that recommendation. You're never going to be mandated to do something at that point. It's just going to be a recommendation for a better financial position for you.
And I'll just elaborate a little bit. We're the same company as Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and we operate over 2 million vehicles as a company. We have the market research. We know what vehicle maintenance should cost. When's the right time of the year to be selling vehicles? So that's why the program's extremely flexible, so that we can come to you with recommendations. Mary Elizabeth mentioned quarterly. 2 of those meetings would be analysis meetings to say, hey, if you guys continue to hold on to your fleet the way that it is, here's what you guys can expect from an expense standpoint. And if you replace these vehicles at this point in time, here's what you can expect, and our job is to help you guys make that recommendation. So it's extremely flexible, and our recommendations may change depending on the vehicle market or the types of vehicles that you guys are operating.
Other cities or counties you're doing business with?
Hamilton County is one of our partners. They've been on board with us for a couple of years. Blount County, Sullivan County. We just recently brought on the Jackson-Madison County school system and are starting to also bring in some vehicles for Madison County as well. And then, as far as the meetings that I go on a monthly basis, probably 50% of them are talking to cities and counties that are wanting to figure out why they should be doing this and why are other people doing it. So it's the fastest growing segment of our business, and it's just because it's one that has now started to gain traction, and everybody needs to do more with less, especially when you're a city or a county and you have budgets and constituents to deal with to make sure you're doing the right thing for the money, for the taxpayers' money.
Do you put GPS systems on these, tracking systems on these vehicles?
You have the option.
We already have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. You have the option on the other departments too, but that kind of answers your question probably. Any other questions?
Presentation, any
Y'all are easy tonight.
Basically, if we initiated our own program, buying new vehicles, put them on a 3 to 4 year max use, kept the maintenance up to the top notch, put them back on the market and sold them at the end of 4 years, how would this compare to what you can save us?
Sure.
Other than the fact you can put us in the lease vehicles for a whole lot less than we can buy them straight off the contract.
So a couple things, and chime in if you want to, but when he mentioned we have about 2 million vehicles as a company, we also sell about 1 million vehicles each year. So the resale market that we have is better than, I would argue, better than anyone else. We have boots on the ground that we know where your vehicles are going to sell the best, and our job is to get the best resale value for you. We sell about 110 to 111% of Black Book. So we're selling above the commercial version of Kelley Blue Book for your vehicles. My understanding is that if you guys buy these vehicles, more than likely they're going to go back to auction. They're going to go back to Gov Deals. And the thought behind that is Gov Deals is going to get rid of the vehicle for you, but there's no one sitting there pushing, hand selling your vehicle to drive that price up. It's exactly what we do. And then the other piece, and it's more so a little bit of a challenge back to that. You know, we've met with customers in the past that said, you know what, we are going to implement our own program. We're going to take what you did and we thank you and we're going to do it on our own. And about 5 to 6 years later, they've called us back because they don't have the infrastructure and the resources to know when to rotate a vehicle out, to which vehicle they should be operating, and then again, when do we get rid of it and how do we get rid of it? So could you try? Absolutely. You know, I would feel very confident that 3 to 4 to 5 years, if it's anything like you guys have everything else going on, and so does the people in the different departments, we'd be pretty close to where we are today. But the biggest thing is resale, and knowing how to operate a fleet of your size because of the vehicles that we operate on a daily basis.
It's just not easy to implement on your own. Enterprise was founded in 1957. We've been doing this business since then. You know, Mary Elizabeth mentioned our resale department. We have 700 men and women that handle reselling of vehicles for our customers across the country. We've got 150 men and women that are part of our national service department that are ASE certified technicians that handle the maintenance questions and the advice that go behind it. The relationships that we have with the manufacturers allow us to get vehicles at great pricing to what you guys are getting now, but to get them quickly. Our relationships with the aftermarket vendors allow us to get those vehicles upfitted and ready to go. That way when they hit, you know, your divisions, they can be used. So it just wouldn't be easy to try and emulate what we do for our customers on a daily basis. And we're confident in the savings being there, so.
Mr. Johnson.
Basically, what you're saying is the obstacles that we would be facing would be greater if we tried to do it on our own versus the manpower, the expertise, and the networking and everything else that y'all are capable of doing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and one of the questions I was going to ask, what you base the value on, Blue Book or Black Book or Kelly Blue Book or whatever, so.
As
you
far as when we
answered
sell
that
it, yeah, it's
question.
the
You answered that question.
110% Black Book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's strength in numbers, and, you know.
Yeah, and again, your vehicles, if they're on the right pattern, they should sell better than most vehicles in the market because they typically have the lower mileage pattern than, you know, we were looking at mileage patterns, you guys, typically governments are between 8 and 12, not your sheriff's department, but any of these other vehicles between 8 and 12,000 miles a year, where any of our other customers, whether they're an HVAC customer or a pest control or a healthcare company, they might be going 25,000 miles a year. So their vehicles depreciate in a way different manner than yours do. Yours just hold their value really well, but they don't hold it for 20 years. So that's the difference. We're just, again, trying to bring you back into where you're operating those safe and reliable vehicles and where it's not costing you any additional money at the same time. Any other questions or concerns or thoughts?
We heard this in property management. I don't think we can really identify any or many downfalls for this. So what are we needing to do tonight to send it to the full commission, or?
Well,
What do we need?
and my thought is, one, that this committee needed to hear it. It's contemplated in next year's budget.
Yeah.
And so the next thing would be, we need to get agreement that we need to bring to you. And whether it's, I don't know if we'll have it by Thursday, but for sure by the next 26th. I mean, I would say definitely be prepared on the 26th.
Lisa said
We
something
want
very
an
important
agreement.
there too, is all the budgets that we've looked at up till now is
Based on
based
these
on
numbers.
us going this route. So if we don't, then we've got a lot of budgets to go back and refigure.
We need to add, I mean, that's some decisions that need to be made, is are we going to, let's pick on
Sure.
the 5 that's in his budget. You know, The question is, are we going to purchase? Are we going to do a little, again, a little bit of both? Would he get one? If we purchase? or do we-
Then your litter transportation's gone.
Right.
So that's $82,000.
Mr. Johnson.
I think we just.
I think I just got him a vehicle.
I think we just paid $600 in repairs last week,
on a van that's not even worth $600, to be real honest with you. So it's weekly now at this point.
Commissioner Johnson.
So Lisa, basically, you factored in this with these 41 vehicles and then the pilot project in the budget now.
And it would be more so based on 40. We had 2 in there for the county garage just to show
Well, could
some
you throw one in
comparison.
extra?
Yeah, I can. What would you like?
You know, blue light special.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, I contemplate, we don't have it for you today, but in this next period of time that we get solid on our master agreements and how those will look, and then present it to y'all so that you can review and get to the commission too.
And we've already sent the master agreements over for Nick and
For the attorney?
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah, so they're already reviewing that. And again, it's the same contract that our other government entities across the nation sign. But every county and city is a little bit different as to what they might need as a requirement. So we've already passed that along. And then we're pretty confident too, just to make you hopefully feel even better about it. There's some additional money that we're able to request from the manufacturer if you order 25 or more vehicles. That's not factored into this, but obviously if we're going to get 40 to 41, 42 vehicles, this could possibly look even better. So we like to be conservative. We're a family-owned company. We don't want to overpromise. So we would rather be conservative and then bring back better numbers when we can.
So basically, we're looking for a recommendation out of this committee to send to the full commission that would authorize the mayor, or whoever, to initiate contracts.
I kind of want to have this conversation, and then if that's the will of the committee to let's go this route, then bring the contracts to you.
Well, would it be possible if the committee decides to go this route, do you think we could have that by our next budget meeting? What's it, 13th or whenever it is? Or
commission meeting?
Full commission, excuse me.
By next week?
Or would it be the 26th? Or I don't want it to hang out to the 26th for obvious reasons, because we've already factored this in. If it came back no, I want some time to work on this budget to figure out how many vehicles we can get. See where I'm coming from.
Need to get time with you and Nick.
Sure.
Because we can, our team can be, as far as our corporate contract team, they can be available for those conversations.
Okay. How many committees have you been to? I know you've been to property management now.
I'm pretty sure it's public safety.
Public safety.
Yeah,
So
and then
3?
I've met with the department head, well, I don't know if they're department heads, but I've met with the different departments on different occasions.
Did public safety endorse it?
We did.
So you got 3, I think you would already have right now 3 committees that endorse it, so.
Is it endorsed out of your committee?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to entertain a motion unless there's further discussion.
I'm moving for approval of this.
Commissioner Johnson moves for approval of the lease agreement. The mayor able to negotiate or whatever we need, I assume. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Gooch. Is there any further discussion?
Does it not have to go to full commission?
Yes.
This will go to full commission, yes.
So this is a motion to move it to the full commission, not to approve it, right? Just with
We'll forward with
recommendations.
approval from the budget committee.
Right.
It's full commission without final say so.
Right.
As they do on everything.
As they do on everything.
Any other discussion?
He will.
Hearing no further discussion, let's call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Folks, I'd like to call a 10-minute break because this next discussion we're going to have is going to be just as lengthy, I have a feeling.
Would you set
10
that
minutes,
motion
that'll
up?
be- Okay, we're all back and ready to start, and we're going to be talking about our communication system. So
Yes, sir. Good deal.
please go ahead.
Well, thank you, everyone. My name is Alex Sherman, the account manager for Motorola. This is my boss, Joe Gordon. He's the area sales manager as well. I believe the last time that I spoke to you guys was in April at the full commission meeting. And at that time, we were still at a crossroads. We have progressed leaps and bounds since then. I know you've seen the small packet from last time. It's progressed into a 500-page full 3-ring binder proposal now. So what's happened since then, we had 2 options. One was to go on the state, one was to go with the local system that it was called then, which is the City of Murfreesboro Core. That option has been chosen, so we've designed to that option, and
that was chosen by committee?
Was chosen by the Public Safety Committee. So all of these decisions have been made by the Public Safety Committee and those members inside of it, and the motion's passed. So this is where we are today. We have a full proposal. Everything is contained inside that proposal. So what I was going to do, this is my final presentation that I had for the Public Safety Committee. Just gives a general idea at the very end of the project, how we got to what I will show you at the very end, which is the pricing pages. So the final design, so it's being referenced as the 10-site proposal. So this is actually the same exact number of sites that you saw back in April that we spoke about. Nothing has changed in terms of the number of sites. What has changed is the number of radios and things that are included inside of this project as well. So there's about 2,000, a little over 2,000 radios and what we call flashes, which are just software upgrades. So there's actually roughly 1,900 physical radios, about 150-ish flashes, which are software upgrades. So some of the highlights here. So inside of this project, it's not only radio, but it's also your dispatch consoles, which is what 911 uses to respond to all calls and dispatch officers, and officers talk back as well. So all of those are included in this project to migrate over from their current situations, current cores, to the Murfreesboro core. So all of it will be one homologous system in the end. Okay? So one thing to note here is Motorola, we provide everything. So we are your one point of contact. We do all the PM, which is project management, the engineering. Staging is what we call staging is all of the equipment is shipped to Schaumburg and it's professionally installed. So every cable is tied, labeled, everything tested up in Schaumburg. And it just, well, it's essentially racked and stacked there and shipped down here. So when it's here, it's ready to go. And it goes into your shelter. It's perfectly, it's ready to go. It's a drop-in install. Okay. And one of the biggest highlights here is the 10-year system upgrade agreement. So what this is, we touched on it a little bit back in April, but what this is at the end of 10 years, the system is brand new. So every 2 years, whether it be a hardware or software upgrade, this system will be uplifted to the current system system release. Thank you. And it's regardless. So if I like to say if it's going from Windows 7 to Windows 10 and it requires a hardware upgrade, that's included. So there's no, your G8 servers, if we go to Windows 10 and they have to have a G10 server, that's included in the upgrade. You don't have to worry about that. So at the end of 10 years, if, it's, what will it be, about 2028 or so at the end, if they're on G16 servers by then, that's what you'll have. Everything in the system will be current, up to date, every bit of software, every bit of hardware. Okay. So one thing that was asked for us to do in Public Safety Committee was just look at adding additional sites to the system. So what we did is we looked at a bunch of different tower sites, locations, ran coverage maps for this, and we determined that it was requested that we do 4 additional. Came out to be 2 was the optimal number. It's kind of a degrading scale of cost versus reward when it comes to coverage. So what we found was the 10-site proposal that I just spoke of gives 95% county coverage at 95%. So on a handheld, so with a portable, which is like a cell phone, as opposed to a mobile, which is mounted in a car with a very large antenna. So this is a portable radio like a cell phone, sits on your hip. So this is 95% of the coverage is covered at a very high intelligible talk quality. It's called a DAC 3.4, delivered audio quality. Okay? So what these two additional sites did, it gave us about 1.3% more coverage. Okay? So that was what our ask was at Public Safety Committee, and that's what we came back with. But just know that this design that we have is fantastic coverage. And one thing to note is where you see white doesn't mean that there's not coverage. It just means that it doesn't meet the stringent coverage requirements that we have set forth in this project.
So everywhere that's green though is not guaranteed 95%
Correct.
portable coverage.
And what Motorola does is when he says guarantee that coverage, we will test it. We'll go out there and we'll test it objectively, data-driven, with service monitors, and make sure that what we have actually shown fits the bill and it actually matches. And if it doesn't, it's on us. It's a coverage guarantee. Okay?
Now, in the white area, you still get coverage, but it's not the high quality.
Sure, and it's not, it's kind of it's a gray area,
Yeah.
I guess, to explain, but it could be 94.9% of the time. So when I say 95% reliability, that's 95% of the time that you push the side button to talk, you will get service. And this could be 94.99, and it's going to paint white. Okay? So most of it's really, really on the cusp, because if you actually lower that delivered audio quality or the reliability, the entire county's painted. And it's just a fraction lower than it should be. So, but this is what we want to guarantee because this is public safety grade. Okay. So as we move into our very last slide, I told you I'd keep this brief. This is an abbreviated version of the pricing pages that's in the proposal. Okay. So when I spoke to you in April, we had a ROM of 18 million. This included what we were referring to as the Rutherford County portion and the school subscribers. Okay, so the Rutherford County portion was 16.5 and the school subscribers was 1.5. So what we have today, if you look here, we've gone back and what we came up with is 16.6 for everything. So, ROM numbers always come down. So instead of what we started with 18 million as a ROM, we're now at 16.6. And that's the final system price for the 10 site. This was chosen by Public Safety Committee to be passed to this budget hearing, is the 16.6 billion 10 site design. Okay. So just one thing to note, so while that is the Motorola portion of the project, actually on your iPads there is a extra sheet that Peter Rogers has put together. So this entails EMS migrating to the MPD, or co-locating. So where you see the grand total 10 site, which is the 17,294,060. So this includes the Motorola portion of the project. This includes a contingency fund for the project to the tune of about $556,000, and also the EMS co-location at Murfreesboro. So that's a multifaceted number there that encompasses a lot. Okay.
Alex, what was that term in your proposal that's included in this? Something connect?
So what we have is critical connect. There's been a lot of talk recently. So the beauty of P25, which is what this system is ultimate interoperability. Okay. One of the things that's come up a lot lately is to have a homologous regional radio system. So Davidson and Williamson are currently tied on the same systems. And by Rutherford County upgrading their system with this proposal to P25, we have something called Critical Connect. What this does is it allows radios to roam into other counties by using a cloud-based service. So you'll actually extend your coverage network to their systems and be able to use their coverage pattern. It's almost like taking your cell phone across the state and you migrate from essentially tower to tower to tower. It's the same thing by going over into their county, and that's included in this proposal. So it essentially makes a regional radio system with ultimate interoperability.
You're just piggybacking your capabilities off of the other counties, correct?
So there's still disparate systems. So you still have your brains, your redundancy, and they have theirs as well. But you can essentially take your coverage and use their system to extend your coverage.
So if there's a natural disaster wherever, say in Williamson County, you know, and your guys send fire, police, sheriff, whatever, then they can talk on that system.
Yep.
Okay, and because we did the one for Metro Nashville, we did the one for Williamson, we did Memphis, we did the state of Tennessee, we did Murfreesboro, so it's all the same equipment.
Correct. It's all Motorola equipment.
Are you saying you'll be able to talk to Williamson and Davidson County, or they'll be able to use their radios in Williamson, Davidson County to talk to other Rutherford County agencies? Okay.
Both. Yep. So there's correct. So there's two facets of it. You can talk to them, and you can also roam into and use their system as well.
Basically, if we have an ambulance that's, say, headed into Metro, and they get out of range of one of our towers, it automatically be picked up by a Metro tower, and we have seamless communication. Same thing with the sheriff's department. He's on a chase, he runs off into Williamson, one of these other areas that we have this agreement with, then it would be seamless. Basically, we're picked up. The thing that we looked at in public safety, since I've seen this 2 or 3 times now, but I personally would like to see us start off being on board with Williamson and Davidson. However, Murfreesboro City has already got in place a core which is different than their core. To change that would cost $1 million. Now, looking down the road, their system is just starting to come up, and not online, hadn't been proofed out. They don't want to mess with this and prolong their system coming up. But it would be possible, say, 2 or 3 years from now, when there's our system, I'm gonna say ours, if we end up going this way, we could change that core, and then we could have this community we're talking about, and that's without paying this other price, the way I understand it, which is
Correct.
about, what, 80?
The current one is it's $84,000 a year.
So that's an extra cost that we wouldn't incur if we were all on the same core. If I get off track,
pretty good
you
job.
straighten me out. But,
Perfect.
you know, I think that it's essential in the future that we do get on the same core. Same thing with THP, you know, I think it's a crying shame that we're not all on one unit across the state here, but, you know, it's gonna cost us money to get there. But I think that if you look at the agreements and what it's gonna cost us, you know, if we go ahead and do this, after about the 3rd year, we could look at the cost of upgrading and making these cores the same, and that would start saving us that $80,000 a year, whatever that figure exactly would be, and that would give us seamless communication now. Until well, bus drivers have probably got some less problems, but until you've driven a fire engine or tried to direct one out in these rural areas and you can't communicate, or if you got somebody kicking your door in and you need some communication out in these rural areas, or even here in the urban areas where we don't have good care coverage, you know, this is really something we need to do. This came out of public safety with everybody voting for it, for the 10 site options. And that 10 site, as I pointed out, it's 5 of our sites and 5 of their sites, speaking of Murfreesboro City. But you also have a service agreement that goes along with this. You know, we can purchase it outright, but you know, what we need to look at is what are we getting on the service agreement? Whether we're going to have an in-house person. We've actually, the way it's set up right now, they've got some in-county people that live here that, you know, say something went down, they're coming over. Personally, I was a little concerned with that, thinking I'd rather have somebody in here, because if you ever try to come up 231 in the afternoon or in the mornings, it's a little hard, not just there, it's basically any artery coming in. But anyway, those are the options we looked at. It came out, we recommended the 10 site option. personally, I think that we should look at the lease option there. So we've got this software upgraded. Now, I've been on this commission, it's starting my 21st year. First year, or maybe the second year, Gooch and I are same time on here. But we paid for new communication systems for the sheriff's department back then, if you recall. And I think this is the third time that we've done that in the last 20 years. So basically, we've spent, well, I'd have to get Lisa to go back and see what we spent, but we basically had to redo our communication systems about every 10 years or less because of software failures and stuff not being made anymore. I mean, that's what's going on now, is they don't make the equipment. I mean, yeah, you could go out and buy the same software and the same parts, but it's not made, it's not manufactured anymore, so you don't have any choice. You're gonna have to go with a different system, and this is just the one that public safety recommended, and it's a good system.
And this is a digital, it's all digital equipment.
Correct.
Most of our equipment now is analog.
That is correct as well.
So we won't be able to get those type of radios fixed like the chairman was talking about.
So, yes. So that's correct.
Okay, so can you explain to the committee what you haven't read up there, because you're making a discount if we sign the contract by June 30th. There's an incentive there of some dollars, and then share with the committee when we would have to make our first payment.
Sure. So up here you'll see, so the trade-in discount for existing equipment, this is including MTRs and current equipment at your sites. There's a $100,000 trade-in discount on that as well. So the biggest one here is going to be the $400,000 contract execution incentive, and that's also goes along with a $200,000 technical credit for the same contract execution by June 30th. So if it is signed by June 30th, your first system payment is due 1 year after contract
If you
sign.
lease with us, right, now I know you're looking at alternative leases. So if you lease with somebody else, we sent Lisa the milestones and how we would break that payment out. But so it's a little, I guess, Mr. Mayor, with us, if you lease with us, it's 1 year from the time we sign a contract. It's when our lease would work. If you lease with someone else, then we have payment terms. I think the first one was 15% when we do the contract design review, which would probably be sometime in August or September. Correct.
So I guess, Lisa, you need to give us some guidance of, because I did get a quote from Tennessee Municipal Bond, and I think their rate was just a tad bit lower than what your all's finance rate was, or you may.
We've talked a lot of different things tonight. We
Yeah.
probably need to bring Sam down and
Okay.
discuss
And
our financial advisors, which is going to be best.
which is
for
going to be
us.
best for us if we just bond the whole thing and
Or use one of those other mechanisms.
or the other mechanisms.
And Mr. Mayor, I mean, you can go ahead and sign our contract, right, in June. And then if you decide to flip it to a lease with us, you can do that. Or if you decide to use someone else, we can work out the payment terms, right? So, if that makes sense.
Excuse me.
I don't She know wants to go home.
My phone off.
I mean, I think what Motorola wants to do is make this, easy, right, for Rutherford County on the payment schedule, whether it's lease or it's open account. Because if you guys lease or bond, then we'll have open account payment terms.
Okay, so you're saying if I sign the execution by June 30th, and then in August, we talk our bond.
I mean, before then, we'll
Yeah,
know
we'll
before
know.
August what we're going to do.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
second week of July, we know what we're gonna do, we can come back to you.
Absolutely.
We still get the discount.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Exhibit B, payment says 25% is due upon contract execution.
Those are standard payment terms, and we're not finished with going through the contract, right? So we've submitted the contract
Correct.
for review to the county attorney. We submitted those same payment terms to Lisa, and we'll make it 0 on contract execution. It's what you want to do. It's like I told Lisa when we talked about it, we just don't want to get upside down where we're shipping a lot of equipment and burning a lot of labor. We want to keep it kind of even, right?
And of course, the sheriff in his budget, when we were going through his budget, he's needing some equipment now, and you need that equipment by September-ish, end of August, September.
July, August is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
We agreed to pull that out.
They've agreed to accommodate that request.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Okay.
And this will.
So you're carrying us to 95% coverage, right?
Correct.
Guaranteed.
Where are we today?
I would have to refer to, I mean, what would you guesstimate it at
85 maybe.
On a good day.
on a good day? It's about 85 on street, and it's much, much less indoors. So this is
coverage map back up there.
Yeah, so one thing that,
And yours is 95 indoors also?
so this is 95% portable on street. The indoor percentage, I believe, is right around 91%. The county is covered in a residential building indoors.
You're talking about with your service, not
Correct,
not
with the
with what
10-site
we've got.
design. Yes.
Those sites right there make up that coverage, right, Alex?
This does, yes.
Yeah. So those little blue dots are where all the towers are located, and they're very overlapping, right? So even if you lost, like the Marshall Knob site, you have other sites that overlap, so it kind of is redundant, it kind of backs itself up, if that makes sense. Those sites all overlap each other.
But the one thing that we have built into the system is redundancy. So, there's a microwave network in this. Most of the paths are dual paths. So if you lose one microwave dish, transceiver, something goes out, you have a redundant path. All the sites internals, they're all redundant. It's redundant switches, redundant power supplies.
To his question, right, so when we get this built out, we're gonna lay a grid map over the entire county, and probably half-mile grids or quarter-mile grids. And we're gonna drive around and test all those grids. And at the end of the process, we'll hand Peter a map that says, here are all the grids where we passed the coverage, and we have to pass 95% of them.
Yep.
So we'll document that, and that'll be a deliverable as part of the project documentation to your project management team.
And somebody from the county doesn't have to be there, but we highly recommend it, to go around and just hear the system perform, and watch the data results come in.
And just for your knowledge, I mean, we did a $22 million project in Williamson. We did almost a $30 million project in Metro, all delivered on budget, on schedule, no hiccups, right? And we're not perfect, but we've been doing this a long time. We did the state of Tennessee system, which was about a $200 million project and took 4 years to build out. We're doing a $50 million project in Memphis. So we have a track record, in Tennessee and, really in North America as far as delivering and being on time and on budget.
So basically, it's 10% more or less.
It's 10% more, but what you'll realize is it's 10% more in a total different quality. So analog has been known a lot. So if you listen to an analog radio, you'll hear the popcorn sounds. It's kind of like an old record when it's kind of warped and it kind of cracks over, dust on the needle or something like that. That's what you hear in an analog. In a digital radio, it's either crisp or it's not there.
That number I gave you is very high. There's places we can talk, Commissioner P. would agree, there's places that you can talk on the pre-existing sites with on the local system right now that you can't talk on our system.
Right.
Well, and if you think about it, the chairman was talking about buying your last radio system. How has Rutherford County changed in the last 10 years, right? So
absolutely,
people, residential developments pop up, commercial, and it just keeps spreading out, right? So you kind of outgrown that. Good thing about this system, we got the whole county covered, so no matter where your future growth and needs come from, you're going to have 95% coverage for public safety coverage in the county. Yep. If that makes sense.
Well, to kind of give you an example, of course, some of those white areas, I live on the eastern side there where that white is, that close to that black dot there. And basically, I go to the end of my driveway, I can't communicate on handheld. I get on top of the hill there, which is about 300 yards up the street, and I've got communications.
You don't like doing that at 2 o'clock in the morning, do you?
Right, that's usually when it is.
Right on top of the hill.
Right, but to give you an example, the sheriff's department right now, I think if you keyed up a handheld in the jail, you can't communicate because of the concrete. So it depends on where you're at. In our schools, for instance, there's schools that don't have repeaters in them that we can't communicate with our school personnel, our SRO officers. The state has mandated laws now that future school buildings will have to have these built in.
Wi-Fi.
And antenna or Wi-Fi, whatever it is. So, I mean, whether we want to do this or not, that's coming because it's state mandated. But the system is much different, and it's just like he said, used to you talk and I'd hear all this static and cracking and I might could pull something out or not. Well, this is crisp, it's clear, or it's not there. So it's one or the other. The systems that, I know that area well from running fires for the last 15 years, and it's basically the same coverage that I'm missing there. However, it's better with this P25 system. And from being a firefighter and having used a lot of these different radios, Motorola makes one of the best radios out there. I've still got some dinosaurs that are kicking just as well as they did the day that I bought them. So and I've used them in industry also. And I think you'll find that most of us out of public safety that have worked with different radio systems kind of agree. Paul, you probably had the same.
Yeah, question. 105 years ago, atmospheric conditions had a play with, and this sounds silly, but in bad weather, you had better communication than you did in
Correct.
So, it's come a long way from 105 years ago when I was.
Right, when the atmosphere's right and you can take a
we had Dixie cups in a string.
We've come a little ways.
No, it wasn't really that long, man, but seriously.
He's talking on the skill.
I've been retired 32 years, so it's come a long way.
It has.
Yeah, and that was probably the low band and our VHF bands, right?
Our system, the dynamotor in the back was going, it'd sing for about 5 minutes after you got through talking,
It's just cooling off.
Well, you're right.
Yeah, and so this is your radio spectrum, right? In the radio spectrum, this is at the 700 megahertz and 800 megahertz band. It's earmarked specifically for government and public safety, right?
This is state of the art.
Correct.
And continually being state of the art for 10 years, correct?
Correct. So every time there's a new system release with new feature sets, it is upgraded every 2 years.
And
if you choose so, and you don't have to, but.
Right. And the reason we have to do that is it's because it's really a big computer network with the radio stuff off of it, right? So, like Alex was referring to, there's servers and routers and software and all that, and Hewlett Packard and Red Hat and all these people that develop, after so long, this isn't supported, right? So our customers, especially governments, you don't want to sell a $17 million system and come back 5 years later, hey, you need to spend another $5 million, right? That's not good. So with this system upgrade agreement, it's just built in and it's levelized. It's predictable for budgeting, right? You don't have any surprises, and it's worked out really well for us and our customers too.
Yep.
Lisa, you'll be able to work this out and handle this without too much heartache and woe.
I guess I want to touch back on what you just said on that system
Upgrade agreement?
upgrade agreement. That's an addition
Yes.
to this.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure y'all understand that
It is a yearly.
it's an additional agreement. I mean, additional
Yeah.
thing.
But there's a 1-year warranty from the time you sign the final acceptance. So it's going to take us, if you said, hey, Motorola, we're good to go in June, you're probably looking at 14 to 16 months, maybe 18 months to get everything built out. Deployed, program, training, A to Z.
So this is the schedule. So there's two facets of it. There's maintenance and then there's the system upgrade. So what we've been referring to is the system upgrade. There is another portion of that, and that's the maintenance. That's on-site response 2-hour on-site response that's having advanced replacement. So if anything does malfunction, it's overnighted to you and replaced overnight. There's preventative maintenance built into this, so every year, can even be biannually if you'd like, the entire system's checked. You can check and see if every radio is performing as it should, the combiners are on tune, everything like that, that's all checked. So everything's in tip-top shape and everything's included in these numbers. So these are the two that make up what Joe's referring to
So the
as
same plan that
continual
Williamson
plan.
has, same plan that Davidson has, same plan that the state of Tennessee has, same
Correct.
plan that Memphis has. I mean, it's just part of the technology package.
Because it ensures you never have to make a purchase like this again, of this magnitude.
And you just build it into your run rate budget.
So that's roughly 5 more million.
Over the course of 10 years.
But at the end of that 10 years, your system is current, right? It's almost like a brand new system at the end.
Yep.
And we're talking about the infrastructure and the towers and the console, dispatch consoles and all that stuff, because they're really computers too.
And all the network hardware and everything like that. It's like when switches, eventually go out of date, they're end of life, they're uplifted, they're replaced as a part of this. And
So-
all that networking gear is not inexpensive.
And we put this proposal up there. If you look up there, there's 494 pages in this detailed proposal and plan. So it's well thought out, engineered, and we spent a lot of effort trying to make sure we got it right.
Yep. Yeah, this has been a 3-year pipe dream. I actually worked on it when I was still an engineer, and it's come full circle. And Peter's been a part of it pretty much since day one.
Now, part of this agreement too that we're looking at is a new dispatch center which will go into the EOC Murfreesboro, where we're going to do joint dispatching with our EMS.
Co-located.
But that also, if I'm not mistaken, will also upgrade the sheriff's department's dispatch area.
That's correct. So that's part of it. So all of the dispatch consoles will be upgraded to the last system release, latest, not last. And then all of your network equipment will be tied into the Murfreesboro core pool. So, and also as an extra layer of protection, there's something called edge availability. And what this does is puts a server at the prime site. So if Murfreesboro HQ ever goes offline for any reason, you have dispatch console redundancy at both prime sites.
But this is
exactly.
This is also tied together. Am I correct on that? Hardwire, basically hardwire.
The microwave system connects all those blue dots and tower site. That's why you can take a handheld radio and talk from one end of the county to the other.
Yep.
Right.
So they're not basically just going out hanging a fixture on a pole.
No, it's
a very complicated network with the latest networking routing technology, MPLS, and top tier routers that are inside the sites.
Exactly.
Yep.
How many years will you have to set this up for us to pay it off?
I would do it, so I've already talked to Sam. Usually we borrow over 20 years. We will structure it so this is paid for in 10 of a 20-year deal.
The full 21 million.
21 million?
16
He's talking about
service
something.
agreements.
Oh, no, that agreements, that will be in the budget. That'll be in the operating budget. We're not borrowing for that money, for that
Maintenance.
maintenance stuff,
Yep.
right?
The maintenance is hard to swallow. I get that. But unfortunately, it's just a way of doing business. It's amazing of the purchase orders I get in from Brian downstairs in OIT of just the renewal maintenance agreements on many of our softwares. I mean, it's like $200,000 to renew our software maintenance software, what we have to pay.
Exactly. That's what I say, Mr. Mayor. The heart of this is a big computer network.
Well,
right?
it is, and that's just part of it.
How much do we spend now on maintenance and upgrades? 0 to...
Oh, my goodness. You're
On
talking about
radios?
across the county?
The console, roughly $170,000 a year.
So we're increasing
But
300,000.
but note, that does not include network security, does not include network monitoring, does not include software upgrades. If we have a router go down now, complete router, excuse me, if it's no longer supported, we have to pay to replace them at 9 sites. So there's a lot of things in this maintenance agreement that we do not presently have now.
So what happens after 10 years?
So after 10 years, you could extend the maintenance and SUA contract and just keep that same upgrade going. There's ability to add things to the system, extra layers of redundancy if you'd like, but at the end of the 10 years, you can just renew the same contract and keep it going.
And at the end of the
Well,
10 years,
so the $500,000 roughly maintenance agreement and upgrade agreement, we could still extend that and will always be like.
Correct.
yes. So at year 10, so you'll get an upgrade every 2 years. So in year 10, you get your last upgrade. You're at the current releases, current software, current everything. And it's like, I'm sure won't be me.
So the handheld, do you think will still be
Yeah.
functional?
It
Just
typically
like
lasts.
Chairman said he's got a dinosaur Motorola and it's still working.
And one thing that's not portrayed here is the subscriber maintenance, so what we refer to as the radio maintenance, so the portables and mobile radios. We've included, there's 5 years of standard maintenance with them, and with this, it includes years 6 through 10 on those as well. So that includes faster turnaround times at the depot, break fix maintenance, things of that nature for those radios, and it's all covered for that 10-year period. So pretty much.
You'll know your cost for the next 10
Who
years.
pays for our
Yep.
break fix stuff now? Us?
The flat rate right now on one model's $500.
Yep. So that's included in it.
So a moment ago, you called the Critical Connect, you said that was included in the proposal, and I see my terms are not the same as your terms, because I see that's your proposal and this is your presentation.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
it's not included in the 17 million, it's included in the
maintenance side
in the
of things.
$500,000 a year.
It is a subscription service.
Okay.
The hardware that runs it is included in that.
So it's 17,000 plus 84,000 for the first year.
17,000.
So, I mean, sorry, 17,294 plus 84,000 or 89,000, whatever that number
Go back
was
to the
for the
service.
critical,
Yes.
for the Critical Connect
Correct,
component.
for the first
Okay.
year.
Okay. Should get on my math.
It's an operating cost that we wouldn't want to borrow.
Right.
Right, correct.
And
So-
again, you wouldn't hit the cash flow wouldn't hit till after final system acceptance and then 1 year of warranty.
Right.
So you're probably looking at 2022 before any of this would hit.
Yeah, so year one here is portrayed as what he said is final system acceptance. That's everything's done. We've coverage tested it. You're happy. It meets all your needs. You sign the piece of paper. Then your warranty year starts. So as the system gets built out, this could be 2021, and you do a final system sign off. That begins your warranty period. You have 1 year of warranty included.
Even though he starts using in September or July of this year.
Correct.
So we're really getting
Yes, so for instance, all of the radios that the sheriff will use, well, the actual maintenance, or the warranty aspect of it doesn't go into effect really until system sign off. So
So if we never sign off, we've got a warranty forever.
Well, I like how you did. If you read the contract we got, there's a beneficial use clause.
Okay.
It's year 5, you're using it, we probably.
Your attorney covered
Yeah,
that then. Okay.
exactly, yeah.
Gotcha.
Probably want a signature by then.
They've seen a smart aleck like me before, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Commissioner Dodd.
Despite having the upgrades every year, you still experience that the equipment's no longer made. So we may still have to reinvest in year 11.
So
What's to say your stuff's not obsolete?
true, so we always stay on the forefront of technology. That's Motorola's #1 goal. But part of that SUA is if anything is at end of life. So for instance, the current desktop computers that they use for consoles, Metro Nashville has what's called a Z420. When they go to 718, which is this year's system release from their current 716, it requires new desktops. So technically, to your point, that is obsolete, right? All of that is included in the SUA. So by the time this year 10 rolls around, right now we're using Z2 minis. They're HP Z2 mini computers. It could be the Z12 by then. You will have that, whatever that current release is, nothing will, if anything goes end of life, it will be replaced before there's none left. Right.
Kind of reminds me of the old Sears system with the crafting tools. You basically you buy a tool and you replace it from now on. Maybe a good analogy, but if you agree with that or not.
So with that stick, if there is in year 16, we stick with the agreement. Then that's the same in year 16 if there's an upgrade.
Correct.
Did it calls for new hardware?
Yep.
The hardware is included in that.
That's exactly right.
Continuation of
Now, in the handhelds and mobiles in, year 15, they'll probably still be working, but they may not be, they may hit into life in 15 years, right?
Maybe smaller, maybe.
Smaller, do more. I mean, right now, the handheld computers, the radio we're selling you has more computing power in it than, like a 486 PC or the current PC. So there's like, whatever it is. You tell me you're the engineer, but they're very smart, the radio devices with lots of memory, right? But over time, they're going to keep advancing, right? New features are going to come on. And you'll probably have, through attrition, I mean, because, his guys are using them outside in the weather, and, they get beat up, but they're durable. And we actually looked at the 10-year total cost of ownership, on these handhelds that we're proposing to you versus less costly radios that you might be using today. And because of durability factors and so forth, it's actually cheaper in the long run to pay a little more for a better product. I think we all intuitively might know that, but we documented that.
Yep. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Are your radios intrinsically safe? The ones we're buying?
The ones you're buying, no.
So if we go to a gas leak, we're in trouble.
We have intrinsically said, and really what that
It's
is,
really a hazmat feature.
Yes.
But we do have intrinsically safe radios. DIV2 intrinsically safe.
and it's just gas leaks around the battery and the internal electronics, so they don't
Correct. Yep.
Depends on the department that's using them, whether they will be intrinsically safe
Yes.
or not. So,
No,
by the way,
that's-
the gentleman that's been answering questions for us over in the corner, in case y'all don't know him, that's Peter Rogers. He's our communications specialist out of EMA. So,
Yep.
Well, and I think, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gurley is, I think he's been with you numerous times between you and Peter.
Correct.
And I think just browbeat you down to, didn't leave any questions unanswered.
We've
right?
gone everything in very minute detail. And it was very
494
clear.
pages worth of minute detail.
Correct. Yep. And
I
it
was going to comment, I'm sure Joe Gurley has grilled you from one end to the other.
Yes, but we get along.
Yes, he's very
He's very
sharp
thorough.
on what he- yeah.
He's very, very sharp.
Yeah, I worked with him at the state for a long time.
Yep.
He knows what he's talking about.
Oh, yeah. And
He's not bashful, he'll talk about it.
Exactly. But yeah, every facet of this project we've gone over, and
He's comfortable with it.
he is, to my knowledge, yes.
well, we wanted to talk about it for another couple of months in public safety, but we looked at the contract that they're offering us, and if we sign that contract before the end of the month, that's why we're seeing it now, instead of even later. There's a substantial savings there. That's one thing I think most of you probably caught that. It always feels like kind of a hook to me. If you buy it now, you'll get it. But the actual payments that we'd be making, the way I was looking at it, is almost a year out.
At least.
So
If you lease,
If
right?
you lease,
Right.
otherwise,
Here's the reason we do that is because we're a publicly traded company. I heard some talk earlier about pensions and whatnot. Our stocks and pension funds, and so sales matter, right? Earnings matter, and so we want to make sure that we can get this done with y'all. That's a win for us, and we'll give you that win back. Right, Lisa?
right.
guys, y'all heard his presentation. I'm willing to listen to a motion or.
Everybody's gonna be bashful, I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, so I have a motion to accept the contract and allow the mayor and Lisa to work on all the ins and outs of the contract.
And we're deciding the leasing and buying and bonding, all that stuff later. We're deciding the contract, like an intent, like a letter of intent now.
It's not a letter of intent, it's an actual contract.
It's a
It's
contract.
contract.
Purchase.
But-
But we can change it later.
We can change it.
Yes.
Yes,
So-
and go ahead. I was gonna say, we also have a non-appropriation clause we can put in there, and I think Mr. Gurley had some concerns about certain things, so we put a termination we're putting a termination for convenience clause, just so the county knows we're operating in good faith, right? It gives y'all ultimate rights to do whatever you wanna do with the contract. And I've done that, I've been in this business 35 years, and had put those in there, I've never had one customer terminate a contract.
You're our legal source, you okay with those?
As long as you say we can go back and make changes in a few months.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Until you sign that final system sign off, you can change whatever you want. If you don't want a tower site to be there, you want it there, that's fine. It's, it's a change of scope.
And the final
change of
sign off
plan.
won't be for another year.
Or plus, probably.
Plus, yeah.
Yeah, but I think he was talking about on the contractual terms and conditions, yes, we've made it we've given the county a lot of leeway to figure out how they want to do it.
Yep.
Okay, do we have a motion?
There's a motion. We don't have a second.
Somebody gonna step up and second it?
Second.
Mr. Coops has a second. I'm sure there are other questions. Please go ahead and let's air them out. This would be a recommendation to go to the full commission, and we'll probably be listening to the same presentation again.
So I'm still trying to figure out how much more are we paying for this in a few years than we're paying currently. Because I think people need to know
Are you saying
for the maintenance.
for the maintenance? We've got that cost, that
Right,
530.
$547,
Compared to what he's saying that we're currently paying.
Right, so we're not getting anything, what we pay now, we're not getting anything that's really on this, that they're gonna provide. Plus in this, right now, we don't have redundancy. That's coming redundancy. And at present time, as we speak right now, we have interference that causes problems on our present communication system for Dixon County, White County, and we can't grow anymore because of the licensing system. Everyone that's going to a different form of digital is just wiping us out. So we're really stuck where we are now. We'll never be able to grow anymore.
Right, I understand all the benefits and problems and things, like what are we paying now?
So roughly 170 a year.
So it's gonna be adding, what, $350,000, $400,000 in a few years when we're done.
Does that include all your break fix stuff here? Because you said you had some maintenance.
Just on-site and advanced replacement.
Okay,
No
what about-
SUA, no software upgrades, no
What about
out of
subscribe
life.
radio repairs, like
No.
mobile portables?
Yeah,
So those
yeah.
costs, you'd have to add into the 107, right? So when you start really peeling back the onion, right, on the actual maintenance, it's hard to figure out. I mean, I've been trying to, unless somebody goes back and you have like really good record keeping, but it sounds to me like it could be easily 200 grand a year if you throw in everything you're paying now. If you got the base 170 and then you're paying the break fix maintenance on the radios as needed, that just rolls up, right? Maybe some years it's less and some years it might spike up more. But with this, it's flat. I mean, you know exactly what it's going to cost you moving forward. And that's an analog system, so they're less, easier to take care of. But they have other things that Pierre was talking about versus the digital system, Project 25, which is a public safety grade system. Does that make sense to you?
It does, so I just thinking ahead, I want to be able to find something we can cut somewhere else or find some way to make up this increased cost.
And it won't happen next year.
It'll be several years.
It'll be on
But
down.
we need to be planning for something to help, because we're going to get hit with a $300,000 increase in a few years, so.
Mr. Johnson.
Basically, what you're saying is the 170,000 now is just the bare bones maintenance.
So something breaks, note this, something breaks that we purchased from Motorola and they put it in. They come and repair it and do an overnight replacement. If it's something that wasn't purchased from Motorola that Motorola put in, we're paying for it out of our pocket.
Pennywise and pound foolish.
So right now we have a problem that Motorola didn't put in that we're gonna have to replace. So and the other key thing is right now we have no system monitoring. So you find out, I pull up on my phone and literally have to look every hour to see if we have our system down. If the sheriff's office says they're having an issue, you have to pull it up and go, oh, we got a tower site down. Where this involves complete full monitoring, network security, which we don't have, which you can't get in our networks. It's hard, but there's ways to do it. So that's the real key, is the upgrade, the network security, and the monitoring.
Sure. Just a quick question on your dispatch center that you've got. How are we looking there? Is it capable of continuing just like it is for the next few years, or what's the story?
Dispatch center has nothing to do with towers. Our consoles and everything, we can have, and we've got the best console because it's what Motorola had at the time. But if we don't have a tower system, I can put the best thing in there and it's still not going to work. But what we've got now is compatible because we bought the best when we bought it.
So
we upgraded that a few years ago.
That's right.
Yeah. And we're reusing that equipment in this design.
And what was that cost on that upgrade? Do you recall?
It was right at I'm trying to remember, about $250,000. I remember right.
So like I said, I've seen this upgrade as we've gone along. So.
But you got to remember, there is what we had was a failing system. It was obsolete, and when it broke, we were having to go on the internet to find parts for it. So that's what necessitated that.
But to me, that's part of the reason for this maintenance agreement is you're not going to be faced with that again. You know, you've got to factor in that you're going to have to replace these failing parts if you don't have a system that's being upgraded like that. So I think if you're just looking at the agreement, that $500,000 a year, which I don't like either, by the way, it seems excessive. But I've talked to some of the other counties, and it's very similar and more in some of the other counties. But if you look at having to replace this and the maintenance cost, I think those numbers are going to grow closer together.
Can you go back to the screen where it lists the maintenance agreement cost?
Yeah.
Is that where? Of course, my eyes are squinting, but are we looking at roughly $500,000 a year? Looks like on year 5 it's less than that.
Yeah, so this is the third line is an average. So it's $463,000 for the maintenance in the SUA, and then the Critical Connect yearly subscription takes it to an average of $547 a year.
Is that negotiable at all?
So what that 84,000 is right now is, without getting too technical, it's a Tier 5 Critical Connect, which allows you to connect to Williamson, the state, and then 3 other entities or systems. So what we can do is actually scale that to a Tier 2, and that number will go down.
And what does Tier 2 give us?
Tier 2 would give you access to the state and to Williamson and Davidson County.
So if this 84,000, that would be the Cadillac version, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What would be the Ford version?
Tier 2.
Tier 2.
Okay.
Yep.
Money-wise, what would that be?
I believe it's about half.
Okay.
Off the top of my head.
And we
Of
can
the
change that.
84,000.
Yeah.
And yes. Yep.
But what you got to remember is some of the agencies you won't be able to talk to are actually agencies here in this county.
Correct. And that can be handled several ways. one of which is this Critical Connect. One is putting a control station at the dispatch for each system. And what you do is you actually patch them together, which means really just linking the two talk groups together. And that's one way that you could solve that problem. This is another way to do that as well.
That gets back to what I mentioned earlier about the core that's being set up right now for Murfreesboro City. They had already decided on that. We decided it's best for us to be able to communicate in county here, so that's why Public Safety decided to go with the local system. However, we could upgrade this after the system's in and it's working and it's proved out. We could actually upgrade our core for around $1 million, which is about the cost of another tower. And probably looking at 3 years down the road. However, that would do away with that $84,000.
That's correct.
Once you got that.
But we'd have the option, if we didn't do this year 1, 2, 3, 4, we could pick it up year 5, this Critical Connect option.
Yes, you could. Or you can, to Commissioner Pease' point, if it comes in year 3 and you say, okay, I want to just connect the cores together hardline, you could drop the Critical Connect and then just use that hardline connection. What this does is emulate that in a cloud service as opposed to having microwave shots into the two systems.
So software, internet
It's a
solution versus a
cloud-based
whole lot of
service.
hardware.
It's a cloud-based service. So it uses AT&T hosted solution in 2 different places around the U.S. Charlotte and Texas.
As the needs change, the option could change.
Absolutely. Correct. Yep. Yep, absolutely.
I think the motion that came out of Public Safety would have actually changed the core on the front end and went ahead and spent the $1 million because we saw the potential savings. You're talking about $840,000 after 10 years, which is almost going to get you, to that $1 million. But you're not continuing to pay that amount. The reason we didn't is because Murfreesboro City's not ready to make that change right now. And, of course, this is all an agreement between both of us, so, we've got to listen to them too.
So we can't make that change without them being on board?
No, you can change Critical Connect without, with the Murfreesboro.
Yes, you can change the Critical Connect. You cannot, well, I wouldn't say you cannot, but you would have to agree upon upgrading the core with
That
the
was
city.
my,
of
yeah, that was my
Murfreesboro.
question about,
Yeah.
we couldn't upgrade, we couldn't change the core decision without them.
Correct.
And typically you have a memorandum of understanding between the county and the city, right, that you kind of address a lot of that on the front end, it's a joint effort, right? Because everybody's really going to be on the same system in this county, Murfreesboro and the county.
So, but they're not incurring the $84,000 a year cost.
Correct.
Correct.
But they're providing access to the core that you're not having to spend $1 million on today. So it's like,
We're piggybacking on their system. So,
I'm just trying to figure out if it's,
sure.
if we ever have an option to not do that.
absolutely,
So that is, the $1 million that you're talking about is our own core,
yes,
and that eliminates that piggyback. So we don't need them to be on board for us to make that decision
correct.
to go with that core and eliminate the $84,000.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, everything about this will evolve and change over time, right? And then when the Williamson guys start getting in here, and my thing is, you gotta get around a table like this, have the public safety folks involved on how they want it, and radio people involved, and then you just kind of work out like an SOP and a governance body, and I mean, that's where it's evolving to.
Well, we've come a long way in communications. I mean, I have to hand this to Mayor Murfreesboro, and our mayor is to agree to do joint communications, which is something that we've talked about in public safety for 20 years, is a leak. And I think we're heading in the right direction as far as agreements with, this other government agency. So I want to commend you for that. If we don't do anything else, even with this, at least we're partnering together like we should be.
So just on that point, so if you look at the sites the county's buying and the ones inside around the city, Murfreesboro built, they spent $14 million to build their system. you're getting a benefit of that extra coverage off of their towers, and they're gonna get benefit of the extra coverage off your towers, if that makes sense, right? So, Alex, which one, do you remember which ones are the Murfreesboro
Yeah,
sites?
so, let's see if it's the middle one, there we go. So this diamond pattern in the middle, these are the 5 Murfreesboro sites, and then the surrounding sites will be the Rutherford County sites.
Which are the 2 that we're not buying since we're going with the 10?
It's the South New and the West New. And I apologize, I don't have the coverage map of the 10 site with me. This was for the Public Safety Committee.
So you're not sure what happened to that coverage
So
without this?
yes, we are. So everything that's in the proposal, the 500 pages, there are specific maps and everything that will test the 10-site system. So the South New and the West New were asked to be put in for in-building coverage. So on a map like this, you won't be able to see the benefit of it. It's not quantifiable in this way until you actually get in buildings. Yep.
And we extended the pricing on those 2 sites, so down the road, I think 3 years after final system acceptance, that price is good for 3 years.
Yep.
So we've locked that in for you as well.
Yep. So if you ever do choose to go that route, it's there.
So I guess I'm still confused. If we do the $1 million now, instead of paying $84,000 a year, how does that disadvantage Murfreesboro?
Peter, you might want to address
So,
that.
so right now, we have 5 sites. If we were to buy our own core to $1 million, then we have to get into licensing for individual radios, so our cost is going up. Then we have to add more tower sites to get that 95% coverage. So what we're benefiting from is their existing 5 cores that they have, sites, their core, and then we're expanding their service. Where without them, we're going to have, our cost is going to go up because we're going to have to increase the number of sites, as well as those individual license fees, software fees, just like with Windows. So
Each site's about $1 million?
Yep. And then so that's not even to say that with our 5 sites, we had to add additional sites. That means that's a new site, which means that's considered a green site, which means, well, if it's where there's rock, we have a lot of that, the cost just increased even more. So really, their core sites or tower sites we're really benefiting from in reducing the number we have to add to.
So we felt like this was the balance between higher cost, you get the same thing partnering with Murfreesboro without having that capital expense up front. However, you can always add that in down the road if that makes sense, right? If you get the system put in and the coverage meets the sheriff's need and all the county users and Murfreesboro benefit, you probably won't ever put those sites in. We were recommending that we like to sell sites, but we told the Public Safety Committee and the mayor, we don't recommend investing that additional $2.3 million until after we get this built out and it's tested, right? And if it meets your needs, great, but you can still add them at any point in the future.
Maybe some of the members thought, why not go ahead and buy the building and go with 12 sites, but it was Cheryl's recommendation that the 10 sites would be the first best step.
Correct. Yeah.
So
And
that's spending that extra $2.4 million.
And that's what I recommended.
So if you think, okay, we're giving you 95% guaranteed coverage today, those 2 additional sites, they do contribute to a little bit on the in-building side, but on the overall coverage, 1.3% increase. So you're paying $2.3 million to increase your coverage 1.3%.
That makes sense.
And that didn't make sense. I mean, we'll do it if that's what y'all want to do, but we recommend get this first phase in and test it, and then that way you know, right? And we're gonna test the coverage and give Peter the data and whatnot. So it's kind of a cost benefit. It's a business case, right? Do we want to pay more for that extra little percent of coverage?
And that's the same point I think that you were making about the $84,000 a year. We're better off paying that indefinitely and adding that on to the piggyback piece instead of biting the bullet and trying to build our own and have them coexist.
Yes.
Just let them live together and pay
Right.
the $84,000. So I think that's what we were looking at is was there a way to eliminate that, and is there a smart way to eliminate that? And what I'm hearing is just keep it indefinitely. That's the better use of those
From a
dollars.
business case, would you rather have $1 million upfront investment or $84,000 a year over time, and you're probably better to answer that than I am.
Well, and based on what he said, it's really much more than $1 million. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're talking about having to build your own system,
And add new sites.
yeah, it's much more than that.
And I think you know this already, but just take note that everyone in public safety is crying for this. School system, we're putting buses on them. We're putting a base station in every school office. With all the recent school shootings, it's one push of a button. It's an immediate activation to law enforcement. Highway department, Pauls. So this is really, the scope of this expands beyond public safety, and the potential growth with the way we're growing this county, it will allow us to grow with our resources.
Correct.
So it's not just public safety as a whole, and the schools are, school bus system is dire need of something. This is definitely gonna work for them.
Now,
School buses are in this.
School buses. And then potentially down the road, you know, as we get, we move forward, potentially we could bring schools further beyond the office into it.
Well, we thought that was important in the event of a lockdown, a storms coming in, you know, all of a sudden phone calls go out to parents. School bus drivers have to go pick up, at least they're communicating with each other, you know, the school buses are, because they play a very important part as far as getting our kids home safe.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ice storms coming in, they need to be communicating.
Yeah, I've got a question about that. Y'all dwelled here on school busing. I'm on my route and I'm running down through here and I go up over a big rise and fall off a hill on the other side and my bus radio's dead. Will your system fix that?
Yeah, if you look at we call it constant, where the towers are, right? It's a simulcast system. Okay, and what that means is that every time you push the radio to talk, all 10 of those sites turn on at the same time. So if you're over the hill, chances are you're over the hill, but there's 3 tower sites that you can still see. Does that make sense? Okay. So go ahead, Alex.
I was just gonna say, just to piggyback off Joe, what you're seeing right here is using a portable, and a mobile is typically 5 times as powerful as portable.
Yeah. So
That's what you have in your bus. Plus, this is saying the portable's on your hip, which is about 3 feet off the ground. The bus radio, the antenna is, I don't know the exact height of a bus, maybe 15,
It's not
10,
on top.
12 feet.
Maybe on the side.
It's on the side.
About 5 foot off.
That's even better.
So it's about almost double.
So yes, the answer to your question is yes. You should have no problem.
And the mobile maps show the entire county painted.
Mr. Chairman, I call for the question.
You have a call for the question. All in favor of calling for the question, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We call for the question. We do have a motion. We have a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
No.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes. Motion carries. Guys, we'll see y'all.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
We'll be back for the next one.
One question I would like to ask before you take off. Mr. Allen made the statement that if we bought this core that we're talking about $4 million, I think what the question is if we bought a separate core, not related to the Murfreesboro core, if we, in conjunction with Murfreesboro, upgraded their core, which will be our core, then we could still communicate and do away with this
Yes.
84,000. So that could be done away with, Robert. I just want to clarify that. What the question came out was if we did this on our own,
See, I
made
don't
our own core.
understand the difference. So if we put the $1 million into the Murfreesboros, we could eliminate the 84,000.
Yes. Yes, that's the way I understand it.
And they're all in favor, by the way, for upgrading this core and then paying for it in year 3 as we move along. They're in favor of moving towards that 100%.
And then you would have a truly hardwired regional radio system.
And maybe by the time they finish their project, because they still have to build more tower sites, right? And by the time we get, if you sign this contract and we figure out all the finances, you may never even have to pay this critical connect fee. right? But we have it in there just so you have the interoperability between everybody else.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Sorry to hold you up. Okay. Let's do something easy, guys. We're looking at the next item, which is a lease agreement with the state of Tennessee for the environmental office space. And that's over in the planning department that we've been doing for years. And Mayor, I believe you're going to handle this one. Is that correct? Or is it?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. This is a yearly lease we redo. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, call the roll since we'll be spending money, I guess.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen? Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes.
Make sure they're paying us money.
Motion
We're not
carries.
spending money.
Well, we'll take that money then.
We'll take the money.
All right. The next item is a dead stock removal agreement. And that's a yearly agreement we come out with. And Lisa, if you want to tell them how much money?
I think it's the same amount.
It's $38,269. It's a 6% increase over last year.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, over the last 3 years. I'm sorry.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Let's see, we need to call roll on this one too.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes. This next couple things are some cleanup items and the general fund budget amendment for unemployment, and this will be for Lisa.
Yes. Routine this time of year, allocating $15,605 from our pooled unemployment line to the departments that have incurred unemployment expense.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Gooch. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, please call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen? Yes. Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes. The next item is the general fund budget amendment for employee insurance, and that's also Lisa.
It's about the third time we've done this. It's another department. I think they changed coverage for having a baby, and so we need to adjust there so they have.
Motion to approve.
And I hear a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes, motion carries. Just so the public knows that's watching, these are routine items where we're basically doing some cleanup work here at the end of the year. We're not just being frivolous about what we're doing.
Oh, no, definitely.
All right. We now have a memorandum of understanding with the city of Murfreesboro for ground lease of property for the county clerk expansion. I believe Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the MOU with the city. I went to the City Planning Commission last night. They approved the MOU. We had worked out the language prior to, basically, it's a 50-year lease with a renewable, an additional 50-year on that for $1 per year. And then it has the language in there that where we could sublease the property to the Department of Safety. And, you know, after that, we will have an MOU to the Department of Safety as far as, basically it won't be an MOU, it'll be a lease that we sublease to them where they bring in their DMV, their driver testing facility, and their THP, Highway Patrol will be in that 12,000 square feet when we build that building on the corner of Blaze and Fortress. But it was approved. It's supposed to go to full council tonight, I believe, and I haven't heard. But I would assume that I've talked to everybody on the council already. They were taking the recommendation of
Do you see that we can lease it to the county in there, or to the state? It says that in here, I just don't see it. We can lease this to the state?
Yeah, it's in, yes, it's part of the MOU.
I just kept overlooking it. That's good.
It's number C, or letter C, under the whereas.
Whereas ABC,
Provide office
county
spaces.
exertion provides services.
first page, letter C, that's what it has. It's for Tennessee Department
Well,
of
that's a
Safety.
recital of facts, that's not an actual action item.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Is there further discussion? Mr. Stevens?
Has our council looked at this as Nick
Yes, he has.
and,
He has both copies.
and knows that we wish to our financial benefit, lease the city property to
That-
someone else?
That's correct, and he's already been in touch with the Department of Safety, and they referred him down to the Department of, through General Services, the department handles all rental properties.
The city has to agree.
Yeah,
So we just,
yeah. I think that all the attorneys are on board.
And, because this is just a memorandum of understanding.
Right.
This is, we're just agreeing to what we think we want to agree to, so.
Yeah, but an MOU is just an agreement to agree.
call for the question.
Okay. All in favor of calling for the question, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We are, let's see, we're not spending money here, so we'll call for a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next item is a general fund budget transfer and amendment to correct salary line items. And,
Quickly go through them. They're within their own budget, within their own lines: human resource, sheriff, workhouse, rural fire, general sessions. The only two that aren't within is drug court and other charges, and we're requesting to pull $14,379 to correct salary line items in the drug court and other charges, which is our vehicle maintenance, and it's to cover their overtime. Drug court is this paying out the other director and bringing the other one back on. I'm bringing the new one on.
And is it any new money or?
It's only
Like,
the
oh,
14,379. The rest of it,
Is what they-
human resource, sheriff, workhouse, rural fire, general sessions, are all within
Okay.
their functions.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Johnson, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Next is our solid waste fund budget transfer to correct salary line items. Lisa?
And that's similar to the one before, requesting to move $15,000 for overtime.
Motion to approve.
For a motion?
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Dodd. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Peak?
Yes. Okay. Our next item is the 2019-20 Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority budget. Lisa, if you want to.
Actually, it's funny, about, 3 years ago, we found out that this budget's supposed to be coming before y'all. So, about 3 years ago, we started ensuring that it did get to this table.
If we disapproved of this budget, Lisa, that's,
And a lot of this is formality.
well, that was my point, is.
Blue Angels still fly?
They were practicing this afternoon.
Can't send them home now, right?
That's it. Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any other questions about the airport authority budget? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, our next item is to discuss wheel tax increase. Lisa, you want to start, or?
I'll start from our last meeting. Commissioner Pierce asked if there was another way to avoid increasing property tax. Wheel tax is the other option. We brought it to steering this week to see how
We
they felt.
just want to make sure that steering had a bite at the apple, and they didn't want to take a bite, so they deferred to us.
They kind of run, didn't they? They kind of run from it.
Well, and the problem that you have is that there's three ways you can do this. The first one's a private act.
Correct.
Which isn't possible at this point. The other one is if the commission votes to put it up for a referendum, which,
And that is possible.
well, it is, but it wouldn't happen until August or September, and by then our budget's adopted, we've got to know how much money we have. And then there's no guarantee the public would vote for it. So that's not going to work at this point. And then the other one is that the commission can pass it by 2/3 vote in 2 consecutive meetings. But then
And that's
the public, well, that is possible, but then you can't collect the money for at least 30 days because somebody in the public can gather up enough signatures to put it on a referendum, which is unlikely considering the size of our county.
Very unlikely.
But you can't bank on the money until about 30 days is up. So at this point in the year, it's just not going to be a feasible option. And I think steering just didn't want to recommend that we move down that path and hope to collect more money.
So what point of the year, Robert, would you recommend we try this?
Well, if somebody wanted to recommend an increase to the wheel tax, the time to bring that up would be probably, December, January, to give plenty of time to either put it up for referendum. You could attach it to a primary if there's an election that year, so the county wouldn't have to pay for an election. But you just have to have plenty of time for the process to work itself out before the new budget year starts.
When it was approved in the beginning, it wasn't put up on a referendum, and when it was increased in 2001 or 2, it wasn't put on the referendum. The commissions voted it straight through.
Well, that's an option, but you just can't collect the money until that 30-day period's up.
Are we broke? Do we have money to run for 30 days?
Yes.
Well, the problem is if you're planning on collecting that revenue to balance your budget, and somebody rounds up enough signatures to put it up for referendum and it fails, then what do you do to fill that hole for that money you're
But you know
recording?
that's not gonna happen.
We don't know that's not going to happen.
How many people voted in the last election?
You know how many names have to be on that?
It was like 10%.
10% of the
Last governor's
This is
election.
Governor's election of actual voters, I think.
So they'd have to get thousands of signatures
We'd
on
have to have
it.
100,000 if there was 100,000 that voted, right?
It's 10%.
10%, we'd have to have 100, what,
You'd have
10,000?
10,000 signatures. It's unlikely, but you just,
I propose this to bring relief off of the property owners. We've continued to bury the burden on Rutherford County's property owners. Now, if nobody chooses to want to help me do this, I'm fine with it. All I know that I'm not going to support a property tax increase when I know there is a slight chance there's other money out there that will fund our budget without burying it on top of the property tax. Now, of course, we've sent resolutions to Nashville to try to uncap the impact fee. It's laying down there like a dead duck. Nobody's going to touch it. And you know why, just like I do. So the only thing left is the poor old property tax. And the gentleman right here said the other night, it's a thing to do because it's the easiest. You're exactly right, it is the easiest. But still, there's other alternatives out there. And I'm all for every dime we've sat here and approved to give all the employees and all the offices, I'm all for. But I still think there's other ways of getting it other than bearing it on the property owner. Property tax is not a fair tax. I don't care how you look at it.
Let me clarify something, Steve, that you said the other night. I live in the city, so I've got city and county taxes. Rhonda lives in the city, she's got city and county taxes. A lot of us do that. You were talking about the rural areas going to carry the brunt of it. Okay, somebody out here with 100 acres and a house on it, that land, open land, is not appraised at there's a lot of factors go into appraising that land, open land. Improvements, outbuildings, if it's wooded land or whatever. So there's a whole lot of factors go into it. And just like I said, Robert, you've got 100 acres, okay, and you've got a house sitting on it, okay. And what did you say your property taxes were?
Around 1,200 a year.
Okay.
Now, I'm on the Greenbelt.
Okay.
You know,
There's a lot of those on the Greenbelt. Okay, I'm sitting over here with the 2,032 square foot house on a quarter acre. My taxes are $1,285. So there's no disparity that much when, excuse me for using this word, but the rural people are not getting raped, for lack of a better way of saying it. I just can't see the rationale on that, because, you know, it is what it is. That's my input on it.
You're entitled to every
Sure,
part.
sure, just like you're entitled to yours.
And if you
Mr.
don't want
Dodd,
to pursue the wheel
Does
tax,
that
let it die.
affect your support or not of the wheel tax, or you just making that as a general response to his other?
I'm making that as a response that I wouldn't support the wheel tax, because to come up with an equitable amount of money to address the budget and everything, it'd have to be an $80 increase,
Well,
roughly, wouldn't it?
$10 would decrease the 2 cents of property tax. Your 20-cent property tax would go to 18.
well, see,
Is that
you-
something like that? No, 2.5 cents. 2.5 pennies.
Okay,
That's
so-
all. It would only reduce it 3 cents.
Well,
But it would,
here's the thing about it, Phil. The wheel tax, only roughly and just generically, only 70% of that wheel tax money goes to the general fund. That other 30% goes to the highway department.
so we
You see what I'm
lose.
saying? So,
Well,
2.5
no, here's the thing. You would have to reallocate how you're going to distribute the wheel tax. Right now, it's 30% to the general, 30% to highway, 40% to education.
That's 100%.
I know, that's how it's, yes, it is. That's how it could jump. That's what I'm saying, so if you know.
So there's no
you
general,
add-
general fund then?
Yeah.
No general fund,
no,
No, it wasn't
Yes.
general fund.
30% was the general.
30%
Oh, excuse me,
general
30%.
fund. So-
well, for $10, 30% of that would go to the highway department.
If you so chose, you'd have to redo how you allocate it.
Well, what would it take, a private act or something to, or could we just change that formula on our own through the county commission?
We can change that.
I think it's.
It's part of your resolution. It's part of your appropriation resolution.
Well, I guarantee you the highway department wouldn't be interested in giving up 5%, because
No, it's-
I floated that with them, and I thought they was gonna run me out of the building.
If you said you're going to add $10 more, and you want that $10 to be allocated to the general fund, it just changes these percentages. Instead of $50, it's $60. You see what I'm saying?
Changes.
I just
All
have to
$10
allocate.
3 and 7 make
Allocated to
10, just as much
education if
same
we
as
chose
5 and
to.
5 make 10.
Yes.
So you just
But the
add,
idea we're looking at
distribute it out
is
there.
not $10, it's, what is it, $80?
No, we're looking at
Yeah,
whatever.
it's whatever it is.
Yeah. If it gets 5 cents relief on the property tax and
No.
$10 spread through.
My idea was an alternative, not use both. You don't need
Oh,
to
okay,
raise
I
the
got you.
property tax and the wheel tax at the same
Okay,
time.
thank you, thank you.
At
You
all.
wanted to know what the wheel tax,
To replace it.
Right.
Thank
how
you.
much it would take
Thank
to
you.
get the 20
If that's
cents.
the topic on the
So-
table,
Yeah.
for Dawn.
To get the equivalent of 20 cents.
20 cents.
what would
20
it be?
cents, $77.
Okay.
Increase it 77 more dollars.
70, yes.
So 77 plus 52 is 129, right? Okay, and you multiply that by 2 vehicles, that's $258. Okay, and this 20 cents on a $250,000 house is about $130 a year. And how many people out here got 2, 3, 4 cars? You talk about being hung from the yard iron, I mean from the cupola up here. If you started to raise wheel tax $77 a year.
Well, one thing that I know we kind of, last meeting, we geared toward the property tax and then the wheel tax, but we really never looked at moving cents and more in fund balance. We didn't look at that. And so my question is, if the commission said no to the wheel tax, no to the property tax, then what will we do? And I think that we would move some cents. I think that we would use more than any fund balance,
Yes, that was,
and we would be just fine. It's my opinion. This year, we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. We don't know what's going to happen in 3 years. We can be just fine in 3 years. No one knows. But we're going to try to raise taxes because there could be another tax increase in 3 years. And like you can't vote for a wheel tax, I can't vote for any tax with that philosophy. Because there might be a need for another tax increase in 3 years.
Lisa, how much would have to be moved out of the ending fund balance? What's our balance now? 40 million? We got a $40 billion ending fund
no,
balance.
well, doing it this way, I said 40 cents, 43.
That's what I said, it was 20 cents and half of it was coming out of the ending fund balance.
So you're still drawing down in
You're still drawing
You're
down.
still drawing it down, but if I remember correctly, we're still in our legal
Requirements. Well, that's why, that's why I told you from the very beginning, is that first pass, we were at 16% in general fund. School board will meet theirs, but we'll be pulling down our fund balance. The fund that I was concerned about was ambulance.
Well, and that's where
And
I
that's why
think
we
we
said we
probably
could move some money out of
to
debt
move
service.
a few cents. And same with the educational capital. And I know from a county standpoint, you don't like that because you're looking off into the future. But at the same time, in looking in the future, we don't have a crystal ball. And things could be much more improved. I mean, look at the tax, what is the online tax, sales tax? Have we factored that in?
No.
No, we haven't factored that in.
It hadn't happened.
It hadn't happened, but will it happen? Could it happen? Again, we don't know everything.
So revenue could increase.
Revenue could increase, and it's hard for me to vote for a tax increase today because we might need a tax increase in 3 years. And we don't know that. And that's just the way I'm angling it. From an accounting standpoint, you probably don't like to say, you probably don't like that because
We get too tight.
you get too tight. Well, I'm used to being tight budgets. So,
That's
again,
probably my biggest concern is drawing down the reserves too much because every single economist for the last 3 years, it seems like, keeps predicting this economic downturn that we're overdue for. So it's got to happen. We can't keep going wide open nonstop. And so that's my biggest concern is, are we going to hit that economic downturn and not have anything in reserves? That was my only concern about doing the 20 cent, doing part of it out of the reserves and part of it in the property tax, was that I just don't want to get too low because, when we did have that downturn before, because we've been so conservative, we were able to survive the way a lot of counties weren't. And so if we get too tight too early and then we hit it, we're going to be in the same shape as some of those others that didn't fare as well.
One thing I wanted to mention, and I'm like Commissioner Piercy here, it's a shame that the only tools we've got are property tax and wheel tax, basically. Those are basically the only viable taxes that we can rely on. And I question wheel tax because you're going to have people fleeing. But we need, to work with the state and come up with some other methods. We've had a group that's worked together before. We talked about things like realty transfer tax, things like that. And maybe it's time for us to set a committee, a special group to sit down and study that again. That's something I'd like for us to discuss in the future, not tonight because I've been here long enough and I'm sure y'all have too. But this internet tax could have the potential to let us go in and start lowering taxes. And that's what I'd like to think that we can do. not only that, I wanted to mention something about Commissioner Piercy and the wheel tax here. If we had to impose a wheel tax and say there were enough signatures to stop it, we'd be in a mess. Okay, so I'm not really advocating going down that line. But if you really wanted to do a wheel tax, what I would advocate doing is say, hey, let's put this on a referendum at the next major election where it doesn't cost us $100,000 to do it. I think Commissioner Stevens was hitting on that. And you know, say, okay, what's 20 cents worth of wheel tax? You know, add that up and reduce the property tax rate by that. But put that on a referendum. You know, I would feel much better with it, but.
There's no way the general public will ever vote it in.
Well, but that's my point and why I haven't supported wheel tax in the past is because I think that the public needs to have that input. I've done the math, kind of like Commissioner Johnson there. I've got 3 vehicles that I'd be tagging. It's going to cost me a lot more to go with the wheel tax than it will with a 20-cent property tax increase. And the thing I wanted to say about property tax increase, we don't know that we're looking at 20-cent property tax. That was a figure that we had to publish for discussion. That's a worst case scenario. So, you know, I want people to kind of calm down on that. But saying that we don't know where we're going is not quite true either. We do know that we got, what, is it 23 people a day moving in this county? And that's about a 4% increase on our schools. And if you go back and look, back in the, early 2000s when we were having that kind of growth, we were almost having to build 2 schools a year. And you know what the schools are.
We built 3 one.
Anyway, my point being is we know we've got obligations that we've got to meet. And we can look at, and we'll have Lisa bring that as we're looking at this, what it's going to cost us. If we can draw this down, yeah, we could get it right down to our 15%. And we can pull money out of debt service. But if we do that, you're going to be looking at a higher increase in 3 years from now than you are right now, in my opinion. Now, maybe she can dig into that a little bit further. We've got a bunch more meetings this month before we're ready to sit down on the 26th to an agreement. You know, that's a couple of my thoughts I wanted to throw out there. But 2, I really seriously want next time we meet as a committee, I'd like for us to talk about alternate taxes and what we could do. You know, maybe set up a committee to work with our realtors and our builders and, you know, our bankers and, you know, our citizens and see what options are out there. You know, maybe the climate's changed a little bit and we could get some help from the state in changing it.
I got one question. Jeff, what's your projection? I think it's 1,000 students a year that are the school system.
1,200.
1,200?
1,300.
Okay, so in 3 years, you're looking at 3,900 more students to take care of.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we cannot build a wall at the border of every main road coming into Rutherford County. You know, we can't stop it.
Well, guys, we've been discussing the wheel tax for a while. Do I hear a motion one way or the other on wheel tax? Do I hear any further discussion on wheel tax? It's not. We're fixing to talk about quitclaim deeds. Okay, we're going to move along. Quitclaim deed of property to the city of Murfreesboro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, this is a quitclaim deed that, at the request for property in the city of Murfreesboro. Steve, if you'll pass those maps out to where everybody can see what we're talking about. This is actually on the...
It's on their iPad.
Oh, it's on your iPad?
Yeah.
Okay. Does everybody
I'll give you some papers.
know where Prentice Allsup Heating and there is right before you get to the battlefield on Old Nashville Highway? That is a piece of property that was actually purchased by the state of Tennessee from Homer Gannon. Of course, we named the bridge going across the railroad track and Old Nashville Highway after former County Commissioner Homer Gannon. And that's basically property that was given back to the state. It's in that loop. And part of it's ours and part of it's the city's. And They're requesting that we quit claim deed that property back to them, and basically no use of us, and I don't think any opportunity of building anything on it.
What do they want for it, you know?
The church is wanting to buy 2.33 acres out of this 5.9.
New Vision.
New Vision Baptist
Church.
Can we sell it?
And actually, they've already kind of worked a deal out for a minimal amount of dollars, but the state incorporated this when they built Thompson Lane and the bridge, like the mayor said. And it was the cities. But back when the county or city acquired it from the county and annexed it in, something properly wasn't done, and there's a cloud on the title. So this is asking us through that process to quit claiming over to them. Because it actually was already done back years ago.
But repeat that, is the city selling their property to the church?
They're selling 2.33 acres to the church.
Correct.
The rest of it,
Retail price, or is it a?
I think it's minimal, like 15,000, something like that. That's what Mr. Whitaker told
Are
me.
we gonna give them property to sell to the church at 15,000 an acre?
No, sir. From what I
Did I
understand,
hear that right? Back
in '94, this property was acquired by the state and to the city, or to, you know,
Correct.
about the bridge and all that sort of stuff. And so this was property that was given to the city
Yep.
under annexation and everything. We didn't have anything to do it, so something was clouded on the
You
title.
never knew we had it?
We never knew we had it somehow.
Who's been paying taxes on it?
It's actually been mowed. It was the cities, and they've been mowing it and taking care of it.
They've been mowing it, they've been taking care of it. It's really not ours, never was ours. It's my understanding, right?
Well, I think it was partly ours at one point, and something happened there with the transaction that whenever the state come in to build the bridge, that the state had it, and then they gave it back to the city. Well, now the New Vision wants part of that for parking, so the city's wanting to sell 2.33 acres of it, and they can't do it with the cloudy title here. And so to clear up that, we need to quit claim deed to the city for our interest in it.
We'll hold this over their head later on.
Well, I think with what we just talked about a few minutes ago, they're giving us a lease on our property.
You're right.
In
on
the
corner
Blackman
of-
deal, I think that's.
On the Fortress for $1 a year for the next 100 years. I think that's a pretty good swap.
I do too. Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Actually, they're gonna quit claiming for $1, so they're giving our dollar back.
I hear no more discussion.
Who was the second?
Mr. Pearson.
Call roll, please, since there's $1 involved.
Commissioner Goode?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
100% yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Is there any other business? Mayor or Lisa?
Next meeting is the public hearing on the 17th at 7 PM. That's Monday, the 17th. Publication will be advertised on the 11th edition of the Post. Then we will come back on Wednesday, the 19th, to discuss any comments in the public hearing. One final meeting on the 24th, and then the commission meeting on the 26th.
We might not need that 19th meeting, right?
Sure. Depends on,
I
yeah.
don't recall any time that, well,
Whether there's any discussion or not.
Yeah.
I know I think we canceled that meeting last year because there was no one to speak
Right.
at the public hearing.
They're gonna be speakers.
but it's a what if meeting. What if we need
Well, we do
it?
like the city, didn't they?
Yeah.
The city canceled their council meeting.
17, 19, 24,
They canceled their
26.
Council meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we are adjourned.
But they
Don't
canceled
get
their
run
meeting.
over.